Hello, welcome to the Fanfic Majesty. If you want more content, you can follow me on Patreon. I will be uploading more content on there that will be exclusive. The link is in the description. Please support me. 12 SS. Chapter 276 Mysterious Woman at the Station. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Along the way, the sea was calm and calm. The train running on the sea seems to come from another world with technology. And I don't know what exactly the guy who built this sea train used to solve the Sea King problem on the sea. Hayden thought of one thing. It seems that the guy who invented the sea train is the Murloc who built his ship for Roger, the Pirate King. Thinking of this, Hayden couldn't help stroking his chin. I just don't know that, but the Murloc who built the legendary one-piece ship is still alive. I vaguely remember that although the Murloc built a sea train to exempt him from crime, but in the end he didn't know what happened. He was executed by a member of the world government. Time passed after the wheels of the sea train were crushed. After a while, Hayden felt that the train under his seat was slowly slowing down. And the train slows down, although there are various reasons under normal circumstances, but in the sea, if it is not directly attacked by a sea king or the like, it will generally not stop. Hayden's head poked out of the train slightly from the window, and then, the majestic city of Seven Waters came into his eyes. From a distance, the entire city of Seven Waters is like a huge, huge artistic fountain in Hayden's eyes. The outline of the island is an almost perfect circle, layered on top of each other, and it looks like a big cake. The citizens of the city of Seven Waters live on that layer of land and build all kinds of houses to embellish the most spectacular scene on this huge island. Advertisement. The water gushing from the highest point of the island flows between the towns and into the sea. The waterways on the island are quite complicated. Just think of this place in your mind as a fantasy like Venice. The city of Seven Waters gradually narrowed in Hayden's sight. Soon, the sea train stopped into the station of the city of Seven Waters Blue Station, a station located between Dock 3 and Dock 2. At least that's what it says on the sign Hayden is staring at now. Hayden stopped in the lobby of the station and watched the people coming and going around. It was obviously not like the scene in the train car just now. After he got off the train just now, he also saw the trains parked in the station, not just the one he had just boarded. It seems that it has been a while since this sea train opened other lines. The opening of the sea train has connected other islands together. Ordinary citizens do not need to take the uncomfortable merchant ship, and do not need to worry about the problem of pirates. They only need to buy a ticket and get on the bus, and then they can comfortably go to the island that is now open. As the starting point of the sea train, the prosperity of the city of Seven Waters at this time simply surpassed all previous periods. Tourists swarmed towards the city of Seven Waters. In the station at this moment, of course, there are also head movements. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Looking around the surrounding scenes, if you ignore this station and the train that is running on the sea, Hayden even thinks whether he himself has returned to the original world. During his previous journey of more than 10 years, he went to a very far place, and then he took the car home today. Hayden shook his head, cleared his mind, and then began to walk outside the station. Lower the brim of the hat to block the exposure of the face as much as possible to avoid being noticed by the station security personnel. Hayden quietly shuttled in the crowd, like a flexible fish swimming in the water. At the same moment, at a station that he didn't notice, a woman with a dark purple cowboy hat on her head and a tight-fitting suit is standing in place, quietly looking at the surrounding environment and the staffing. She also got off the sea train, but not the Hayden train. Advertisement. At this moment, her eyes are scanning the surrounding environment like a laser scanner with no dead ends. Suddenly, somehow, among the crowds of people, she strangely noticed Hayden's direction. How could the person with the sun hat give her a familiar feeling? The figure-marked woman felt strange in her heart. That strange feeling, even though the person's face was hidden in the shadow under the hat, she seemed to know that person. Moreover, this feeling is not that kind of illusory, it can be cleared up after thinking about it. It seemed like, from the depths of her heart, from the depths of her soul. Hayden's figure was in the crowd, and gradually approached the gate of the station. In less than 2 or 3 seconds, the others were about to disappear in this hall. At the gate, Hayden looked back habitually, not only to check if anyone is following him, but also to deepen the impression of the station hall. However, what he didn't expect was As soon as he raised his head, his face was exposed for just a second, but a woman in the station who had been staring at him after spotting him, saw the face under his hat clearly. The woman was shocked by Hayden's face, her eyes staring like a pair of copper bells, and her face was full of shock. In an instant, her steps immediately moved in Hayden's direction. However, Hayden's figure also disappeared in the crowd. Although not many people gather outside the station, the area outside the station is large and people are scattered. The familiar feeling that had arisen in the woman's heart just now gradually disappeared. Hayden's figure disappeared from her vision. Advertisement. The excitement that has just risen in the woman's heart, at this moment, is like falling down suddenly from a high cliff. After a while, the sudden blow to her emotions did not defeat her sanity. A look of determination flashed in her large and bright eyes, and her footsteps began to move towards the city of Seven Waters. Soon, her figure disappeared into the crowd. No one noticed the unusual atmosphere in the air, and no one noticed Hayden and the woman, two ordinary people one after another, stepping onto the streets of the city of Seven Waters. At the same time, Hayden didn't feel anything, only the smell of the sea in the city of the Seven Waters was stronger. Okay. Hayden couldn't help moving his nose, squinting his eyes to examine the surroundings. At this moment, the sun is just above the head, and the temperature in the air is pleasant, neither cold nor hot. Hayden walked on the street in the outer area of the capital of Seven Waters, feeling the scene like a street in a typical scenic spot, with all kinds of gadgets and souvenirs on both sides of the street. Although Hayden knew the value of these things themselves, they definitely couldn't reach the prices that they could sell to other people, but it was still okay to feel the atmosphere of afternoon play. Hayden walked in that direction while inquiring about where to go to build the ship. Suddenly, a strange noise came from far away. Chapter 277 Assault on the Judicial Ship. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Boom. 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 The strange sound became very clear in an instant. Hayden couldn't help frowning, listening, turning to the direction where the sound was sounding, which was to the right of where he was standing now. Okay. That sound is the sound of a shell exploding. Hayden would never miss this movement. The sound of the explosion is endless, and it seems that it does not intend to end immediately. Now this posture is seen in Hayden's first reaction. Is there a pirate attacking the city of Seven Waters? Hayden was not sure of this guess. If the sea train hadn't been opened before, then those pirates who came to attack the island, the Navy might not be able to arrive in time. But now, it is estimated that not long after the opening of the sea train, the city of Seven Waters has attracted this much attention. Those guys are so courageous. Hayden thought, and at the same time his steps began to move to the right. At the same time, the sound of the explosion was also attracted. The mysterious woman who appeared at the station heard the sound of the explosion, and she followed in the direction of the explosion. After all, the place where the noise came up was that she had no clue to find the place where Hayden seemed most likely. The outermost area of the city of Seven Waters, that is, the area on the edge of the island, is divided into one to several docks. Each shipyard is separated by a high wall in the middle. This high wall is the huge drainage outlet of the capital of Seven Waters. The water sprayed from the top layer of the island flows into the sea from it. The sea train station where the sea had landed before was between Dock 2 and Dock 3. Hayden is now going to the right, which is in the direction of Dock 3. Advertisement. However, Hayden felt that the place where the explosion sounded was not in Dock 3 yet, and it seemed that he had to walk forward to Dock 4. Hayden's figure shuttled quickly across the roof, crossing 3 or 4 houses in one step. Soon, he rushed to the scene of the explosion. However, when he rushed to the scene and stepped on the high wall of the drainage port next to dock number 4, he looked at the port outside the dock and saw a ship carrying the flag of the world government. After the artillery fire, the ship was full of smoke and fire everywhere, and even the hull was tilted a bit at the moment, as if it would sink into the sea in the next second. There is a delicate appearance that can be seen from this ship, even if it is a world government ship. This is a special kind. However, good guys, are the pirates in the first half of the Paradise so courageous now? Hayden sighed with emotion, narrowed his eyes and continued to look at the scene of the port ahead. Suddenly, at the edge of his line of sight, he immediately noticed that there seemed to be a group of small boats on the sea, moving towards the side of Dock 5. Are those guys who fired? Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Hayden was not in the harbor, and he saw that there were cannons anywhere that could blast the world government ships into their current appearance, so what attacked the ships could only come from the sea. On the sea, apart from the group of small boats that I saw just now, there was no sign of any ships appearing. Immediately afterwards, just as Hayden went down and went to the port to further check the situation. At this time, he suddenly noticed that there was a small group on the port below, and the guys who were obviously different from the surrounding citizens appeared. In that small group, there was a head in the front, and those in the back were basically wearing uniforms of similar styles and colors. Here comes the world government. Advertisement. The corner of Hayden's mouth could not help but gently cocked. It is rare to see the world government being so miserable by others, and a hint of wanting to watch a good show suddenly rose in his heart. Thinking about it this way, Hayden, who was standing on a high wall, switched from a standing posture to a sitting posture, sitting on the edge, looking down carefully. What would the people of the world government react? As for finding the boatman and the one who built the ship for One Piece, this matter can be a little longer. Anyway, those who are there are always there, and those who are not will not be there, not to mention that it will not take much time to watch the show. Hayden sat in the best auditorium, looking down at the harbor stage below. Humph. At the port, the leader of the world government snorted. Seeing the slow sinking of the judicial ship in front of him, there was no angry expression on his face, but a cruel smile appeared on his face, as if this own ship was destroyed by himself. Now, let's see if you still have what way. This person is called Spandam, the chief of the World Government Organization CP5. This time he brought his hands down to the city of Seven Waters, just for Tom, the blueprint in the hands of the Murloc who built the ship for One Piece. And that blueprint is exactly one of the 3 ancient weapons that can destroy the world, the Pluto, in the world of One Piece. Oh, by the way, this guy named Spandam is the CP9 chief in the judicial chapter in the original plot. At the same time, he was also the son of Spandane, the chief of the world government who landed on the island during the O'Hara incident in 1502. Therefore, this guy is considered to have a relationship with Hayden that he doesn't even know. Behind Spandam was a small group of world government personnel, as well as a group of Navy soldiers with long guns in their hands. At this moment, they all stood on the small square in front of the port, seeming to be waiting for something. Hayden focused his attention on the port, on the face of the head of the world government, trying to see who that person is. However, he hasn't waited for him to focus. Behind the crowd watching from the square, a small group of Marines suddenly entered the crowd with someone and led them to the center of the small square. What? Advertisement. Hayden couldn't help frowning. Did he catch people so quickly? Feeling strange, Hayden immediately jumped off the high wall cleanly. The figure flickered between the buildings, and soon his figure had quietly mixed into the ordinary people in the small square. Hayden stood behind a big guy and looked over his shoulder to the middle of the square. Murloc. Hayden was shocked at the first glance. At this moment, there are 3 people escorted by those seamen. One body is much larger than the average person, and 2 are similar to the average person. Although the 3 people were covered with scars, as long as they were not blind, they could be clearly identified at a glance. The guy who was obviously not an ordinary person was a Murloc. Then Hayden turned his attention to the group of world government. Focusing on the face of the leader, he was also shocked for a second. But after a while, his mood immediately returned to normal, with an unexplained smile rising from the corner of his mouth. It seems that today is your unlucky day. Your father, I don't have time to clean up. This time, I will reluctantly clean up you first. Hayden's gaze fixed on Spandam, and he thought to himself. Hayden hadn't forgotten what his father did on O'Hara Island. Wrong. Although he had forgotten for a while, he still remembered it well now. Hayden retracted his gaze and focused his gaze on the Murloc in the middle of the square. Chapter 278 One Piece's Boatman, the man has to puff up his chest. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. As for this Murloc who appeared in the city of Seven Waters. Don't think about it, even though Hayden can only see his back from this angle. But he understood that the Murloc must be the boatman of the legendary One Piece. And the one next to him should be his 2 apprentices, one is something, and the other is Frankie the boatman in the protagonist group behind. Okay. The emotion in Hayden's heart suddenly became a little excited. That is,
I found the best person to build an invincible warship for myself, and I can also cross out a name on the kill list. An island can do two things, and it's a good deal. Hayden couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth and smiled. At the same time, a woman with a dark purple cowboy hat also walked into the crowd watching the harbor this time, but she did not stand in the area near Hayden. At this time, the Spandam began to walk around the Murloc named Tom and his two apprentices, and at the same time loudly told the surrounding citizens what crime the three of them had just committed. My name is Spandam, and you guys are the criminals who attacked the judicial ship. Don't worry, they have been subdued by our CP5 now, they can't move anymore.
With an overwhelming smile on his face, Spandam walked to the chief referee who got off the judicial boat. The chief referee came to the city of Seven Waters today to judge Tom, because the credit for building a sea train is enough to offset his charge of building a ship for One Piece more than a decade ago, and Tom can be released without charge.
However, this one came out today. The crowd onlookers around the harbor didn't want to understand. They all knew that Tom would be forgiven for his crimes as long as he waited for the day to pass. But now, it seems that after all, he is still an accomplice of One Piece. Advertisement. The onlookers were all discussing Tom's affairs in a low voice, and Hayden also collected a lot of information, but most of them were information that was useless to him. Spandam shook hands with the chief referee, and after identifying himself, he stood aside and waited. And the chief referee, at this time, also understands what he should do. But he couldn't figure out why this fellow Tom would do such a thing today. First of all, it is the matter of the sea train. It can only be said to be excellent. In the future, it will definitely make a great contribution to the development of the city of Seven Waters. Therefore, you originally committed the crime of building a pirate ship for Roger. It can be written off. The referee carefully told Tom, who was sitting in the center, and at the same time told the people around who were watching this scene. But, why did you commit a crime again? His voice contained incomprehension and regret. What a joke! The young Frankie roared, we are not the criminal who attacked the judicial ship, but the bastard named Spandam standing over there. His tone revealed a flame that was hard to vent. Frankie was right. But besides him and Tom's other disciple, Bingberg, and Tom himself, only Hayden, who had seen the plot, knew that what he said was right. Frankie's words sounded like a big joke in the ears of the crowd watching the show, and everyone couldn't help laughing. Similarly, the culprit Spandam also laughed. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. He laughed out loud and sincerely, but not for the same reason as the people around him, but laughing and mocking Frankie. Even if the truth was told, it was still useless. You call flam. Speaking of which, we caught you prisoners on the spot on those boats. With a gloomy expression on his face, Spandam pointed his finger at Frankie and said, also, those clothes are made by your company. Frank faced this problem, he couldn't explain it. The tragic scene that happened just now began to emerge in his mind, and he fell silent. The ship that can do that kind of thing, already. That's not my ship, Frankie yelled at Spandam. Advertisement King. Suddenly, Tom, the Murloc, with a huge system, easily broke free of the handcuffs of his hands. Ah! Tom broke the handcuffs. Run away everyone. The onlookers were immediately frightened, and immediately fled towards the surroundings. Hayden also mixed in the crowd, pretended to be a little bit, and then hid in a hidden corner nearby. And that mysterious woman had the same thoughts as the surrounding people. Since Hayden was not found, and now there are people from the world government appearing, he should leave the area immediately. Just when she was thinking like this, she turned around and glanced casually, but noticed Hayden's corner at the moment. Boom! Tom, who broke free of his handcuffs, hit Frankie with a punch, hitting him to the ground. What are you doing? Two people, Frankie and Bingberg, immediately question marks appeared on their heads. That's not my ship, Finch. Tom called Frankie's nickname. The expression on his face had never been as serious as this moment. That kind of thing is absolutely impossible to say. Frankie, who didn't understand the true meaning of this, immediately retorted. However, Tom was silent for a while, and slowly pulled out the harpoon stuck in his body. No matter what ship it is, as long as it is built, there is no good or bad. It doesn't matter what ship you want to build in the future, but the ship we built, no matter who hurts anyone, even if it destroys the world. As its parents, we must all love it. Advertisement. As the people who built them, we cannot deny their existence. Don't blame the ship. Faced with the ship he built, the man has to stand tall. Tom the Murloc, Tom the boatman. Under the gaze of countless eyes around him, he showed his true beliefs, and consciousness in his heart. The crowd on the square was all stunned by Tom's imposing words. They all stared at Tom, who was standing erect in the center. Frankie shed tears uncontrollably, and there was no expression on Bingberg's face. What happens next? You definitely don't interrupt, Tom said with his back to his two disciples without any doubt. The atmosphere in the air, as if cooperating with Tom, suddenly dropped. The crowd onlookers also felt something inexplicably at this time, instinctively wanting to leave the small square of the pier. But Hayden continued to hide in a hidden corner, continuing to observe things. However, although he needed Tom to survive and build him a ship, he didn't want to save a few of them directly here. If you rescue a few of them here, you will definitely expose your identity. And this city of 7 waters, when calculated from the Navy headquarters, is actually not far away. Besides, even if they were rescued here, they wouldn't be able to stay here for long. And if you leave the city of 7 waters, which island should be used for shipbuilding, this city of 7 waters is already the center of shipbuilding, and it is impossible for other islands to have such a complete place and everything related to shipbuilding. And so, Hayden estimated that it is impossible for Tom to be executed directly here. He has a special status and will definitely be taken to the judicial island for execution. Finally, since the judicial ship has now been destroyed, they can only take the sea train to the judicial island. And that was when Hayden rescued Tom. Chapter 279 Devil's Son Nicole Robin. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement, quickly leave the dock. Tom revealed his cruelty. Because of Tom's action of breaking the handcuffs, the surrounding citizens quickly pulled away from Tom. However, they did not go far. After all, there are people from the Navy and world government here. Tom didn't care what the people around him thought of him. There was no expression on his blood-stained face. It is the world government who is blaming us. It is the world government who is going to judge us. This kind of suspicion is impossible to clear. This time it is really going to be over. Tom looked at Frankie and Bingshan, his 2 apprentices, and then at the people of the world government in front of him. The emotions in his heart were very complicated. It's very painful for the pure boats I built to be used by others to do this kind of thing. You must really want to beat that guy, Frankie. Tom thought unwillingly, his eyes fixed on Spandam. Then, something unexpected happened to everyone. Drink. Oh yeah. Murloc Tom, with a strange power, used a jar big fist to hammer Spandam's right cheek with one punch, without everyone reacting. Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom, stop. 2 of his apprentices, as well as his pet Yokozuna and his friend, the Coco Roman fish mother, were frightened by Tom's actions at the moment. Spandam received a terrible blow, and even his brain was blank for a second. However, it seems that Tom did not exert much strength. To know Tom's strange power as a Murloc, he can lift a 3-masted ship at will with one hand. Advertisement. Using his remaining clear will, Spandam immediately issued a loud shot command. The Marines who had surrounded Tom all pulled the trigger at the same time and fired anesthesia bombs. The atmosphere in the air at this moment is like the tranquility before the storm. After a while, 2 of Tom's apprentices looked at the subdued Tom and became excited. The crowds of citizens who were onlookers showed the appearance of Tom's madness just now appeared in their minds, and their attitudes began to completely turn to the world government side, and began to talk about Tom's evil. This moment, it seemed to Tom that even his breathing was a sin. Several narcotic bombs just kept Tom unable to move, and his consciousness was not asleep. He knelt on the ground in the harbor and looked directly at the chief referee. The chief referee. The attack on the judicial ship. I plead guilty. His tone was intermittent, and the narcotic bomb had a certain effect after all. But, I have a request. You said that the credit for building the Zeatron can offset a crime. If that's the case, I hope to offset today's crime. Tom's words calmed everyone present. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The chief referee also slowly said to him. Even if, as you said, we are only going back to where we were 14 years ago, you are still guilty. you can still betray you for the crime of building a ship for the One Piece. After Tom heard this, it seemed that this one was better. Suddenly, without warning, Tom yelled a word that was unexpected. I am very proud to help Roger do things. Tom's words echoed clearly over the port, making everyone present could hear it clearly. He is so. Advertisement, I am actually proud to have helped One Piece. He wants to rebel. Cruel Murloc. The crowd's onlookers began to discuss. After that, after Tom had spoken to Frankie, the effect of the anesthetic ammunition in his body finally began to deepen. Tom fell to the ground. The huge body made a bang. At the same time, it was like a heavy drum sound, which sounded in the hearts of Frankie and Bingberg, and those close to him. Spandam wanted to arrest all three of them, but the chief referee denied his order and only pronounced Tom alone. Hayden, who was hiding by the side, watched the people of the world government take away Tom, who fell on the ground, letting go of Frankie and Tom's other disciple. However, just when Hayden wanted to leave here, he went to the station to see the situation. Frankie took advantage of Spandam's carelessness, grabbed a spear in the hands of a seaman, and slammed Spandam's face with a butt, giving him the face that had already been attacked. Take a heavy blow. I rely on. Hayden was interrupted by Frankie's impulse. He didn't expect this guy to be so fierce compared to himself. Seeing that the surrounding Marines were going to solve Frankie directly, Hayden's plan was completely disrupted, and he could only decide to save Frankie first. Hayden's figure protruded partly from the shadows. But before he could take any action, Frankie relied on his ability to escape from the encirclement of the Marines. It's okay. Hayden didn't know what to say. At the same time, the mysterious woman standing on the other side of the harbor before, she was finally about to walk to where Hayden was hiding without attracting anyone's attention. Advertisement. But seeing the people of the world government are leaving one after another, Hayden also intends to leave here immediately and rush to the station first. He stepped out instantly, and Hayden's figure instantly disappeared in this shadow, just like when he came, leaving quietly. What? The mysterious woman who was about to approach Hayden gave a soft cry. She hadn't called out Hayden's name, but Hayden's figure disappeared in front of her eyes out of thin air. She hadn't had time to react at all. Her emotions were the same as in the station before, and she experienced a roller coaster of mood, again. Therefore, she was a disguise that shouldn't have attracted anyone's attention, and she revealed a trace of flaws without her realizing it. And this flaw, it happened to be detected by the intelligence personnel of the nearby world government. That woman could not be that. The intelligence agents of the world government stared so hard that they were about to fall out, as if they couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe his casual glance, and he actually caught a glimpse of that son of the devil, Nicole Robin. Continue to observe. Looking at the face that was similar to the photo on the latest intelligence, he was quite sure that the woman wearing the dark purple cowboy hat was the son of the devil, Nicole Robin. He took out the phone worm, and the phone signal was directly transmitted to Marine Vatican headquarters. Then soon, the instructions from there came over, asking him to continue to monitor, and support would come soon. The phone worm was closed by General Warring States. The Navy immediately began to assemble a team, ready to set off to the city of Seven Waters to capture the devil's son, Nicole Robin. Immediately afterwards, Robin's figure suddenly disappeared from the sight of the intelligence agent. What? The intelligence agent couldn't help but yell, "Oh!" Chapter 280 Steel Behemoth vs. Physical Body. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Blue Station. C train station. Hayden hid outside the station, looking at the people of the world government, and led Tom into the station. Then he changed to the roof of the station. After the world government arrived at the station, the entire station was temporarily blocked by people from the world government. After a while, the sound of the train whistle rang. The sea train gradually pulled out of the station and began to set off towards the end of the endless sea. Hayden also followed the start of the sea train. Directly in the air along the track of the sea train, using a speed faster than the train, flying at extreme speed. The sea train was soon left behind by him. Hayden continued to head forward, flying towards the endless sea. Only when checking the track below to make sure that he was not flying, did he slow down and look down once. Then, no time passed. Hayden estimated the distance he had just flown. Make sure that this place is not close to Judicial Island, nor the city of seven waters. Then he stopped walking in the air and was ready to start falling. I intend to be right here, looking at a place full of ocean front and back, and robbing the sea train. But this time, as he looked down, he noticed that there seemed to be a figure on the track ahead. He squinted his eyes. Frankie? Hayden was not surprised that Frankie appeared on the orbit. In the original book, it seems that this guy tried to intercept the steel behemoth of the sea train with his body. Then, Frankie, who was almost paralyzed by the crash, did not know how it was caused, and turned into the appearance of a cyborg when he appeared on the field. Hayden admired this guy's faith and consciousness. Advertisement. I admire him for wanting to resist the 1,000-ton steel beast with his body, but Hayden's figure suddenly fell in front of Frankie, blocking him. Hayden, dressed as a tourist, immediately surprised Frank. His brain didn't react for a while, yelling Hayden to let him go, instead of wondering who the guy who suddenly appeared in front of him was and how he came. Hayden turned his back to him and did not speak, only showing him what was wrapped in a thick gray cloth on his back. The things on his back are his 2 Zhanpakudao knives, which are wrapped and tied together by a long piece of gray cloth. At this time, suddenly, there was a shock in the track under my feet. What Frankie realized, and Hayden also realized something. Frankie hurriedly ran towards Hayden not far ahead, trying to push him away from the track, but he was pushed directly into the sea by the unknown guy in front of him. Ooh! The siren of the sea train rang far away, but the sea train was very close to Hayden. Mr. Spandam. Someone is blocking the track. There was a commotion in the carriage, and I couldn't believe someone was standing on the track. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Hayden looked at the surging momentum of the sea train, and the corners of his mouth were slightly tilted. It's been a long time since I moved my lower body. He watched the train approaching, muttering to himself, and at the same time he couldn't help shaking his 2 arms. He didn't intend to block the following cars with Zhanpakudao. His physical body is enough to do this. Kang. Hayden suddenly stretched out his hands forward, his muscles suddenly tightened, and his arm color immediately covered his arms, which appeared gleaming in the sunlight. Immediately afterwards, advertisement. It's between this electric light and flint. The front of the sea train suddenly touched Hayden's outstretched palm. There was a loud bang. The incomparable impact was all released toward Hayden's body at this moment. And this train car, but no bullets shot at him. It seems that they know they have stopped. Boom, hee. Hayden chuckled, which was interesting now. However, finally, he stopped on the roof of a carriage. Although the train is in this situation now, some guys in it estimate that there is no major problem. They must have notified the current situation, and reinforcements are expected to arrive in a while. Rumble. This train is estimated to have been rounded up by the world government, and no ordinary citizen will be on this train. Hayden didn't take care of Frankie, who was still in the sea. Hayden stomped the car, kicked a big hole in the top of the car, and then fell firmly into the car. Thinking of this, Hayden speeded up. The extremely violent impact came back from Hayden's body and hands. Simultaneously, there are still clear world government subordinates in the car. They feel the noise on the top of the car and realize that the guy who intercepted the following car is now walking over their heads. Bang bang bang. However, Hayden didn't care much. Advertisement. A strong momentum then spread in all directions, and the sea was stirred up by the waves. Then Hayden, who was walking in the rain of bullets, dodged his body in various ways along the way. No bullet hit his body, even the corner of his clothes was not touched. Everyone in the carriage could see the appearance of the people who came. In the eyes of Frankie in the sea, countless bullets were fired toward the top of the car suddenly, forming a dense bullet net. The bullet pierced the roof of the train, and in an instant it smashed the roof into a sieve. He jumped gently, jumped onto the roof of the car, and while walking on the roof, he also saw and heard the color scanning all the way. It seemed that the guy's body was 1,000 tons of steel. They didn't even think about it and immediately pulled the trigger of the gun in their hands. Since this guy came directly at them, then this guy must also know what he is doing now, and he actually did so. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. About the middle section of the car near the rear end, the impact force has risen to the extreme, and with a sudden blow, the rear half of the car bounced into flight. The sea train, the train he and Mr. Tom had built by himself, seemed to be glued on paper at this moment, except that it was painted in color. Tom's breath is under the train, as is the Spandam and his men. The fast-moving sea train was stopped by Hayden with only 2 arms. The sunken front of the car suddenly arched, and then like a wave, the long carriages behind the front of the car, row after row, all arched high. Spandam showed a trace of weakness, and then shouted angrily at the defender next to him, and shot Hayden, anyway, whether he was shooting, or anything else, as long as the attacker was taken down. Seeing a guy dressed up as a beach tourist, but with a very inexplicable breath on his body, Spandam suddenly felt a trace of fear in his heart. The sea train stopped crookedly on the track, and the people inside were obviously sure that they had experienced a sense of chaos in the world. At this time, Frankie, who was still in the sea, was so frightened that he forgot to move his feet. When the sea was almost out of his eyes, he realized that he had just been stunned. The rising smoke dissipated. Chapter 281 One Piece Shipcraft. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. However, facing the fierce firepower close at hand, Hayden, who stood in place, did not dodge for the first time. Even the bullets fired at the same time have locked all the space in front of him. Huh! Hayden's figure suddenly disappeared before everyone's eyes. Bang bang bang. The bullet rain immediately hit, and the wooden carriage wall behind Hayden shot countless small pits in the last second. For a while, sawdust splashed and smoke rose. People! Where is that person? The smoke obscured the position where Hayden stood just now, making Spandam and several of his men invisible for the first time. However, Tom, who was standing next to them, Tom, who had recovered from the effects of the narcotic bomb, noticed Hayden's movements at the moment. He was the first to turn to the rear carriage and look. You guys are too naive, right? Hayden's voice sounded faintly from the rear carriage. What? This person is so fast. Spandam's men immediately realized that this guy is probably not the guy they can deal with. Spandam was also greatly frightened. You guy, who is it? Don't you know that we are the CP5 of the world government? While horrified, Spandam didn't forget to use his name to frighten the attacker in front of him. Although he knew that since this guy dared to do something like this, he must understand the fate after this. Hayden smiled. I know who you are, Pandam, right? He paused when he said that, and stroked the hat on top of his head with his right hand and the sunglasses on his face with his left hand. Advertisement. Who? Spandam and his men shook their heads. Even the Tom next to them was a little curious. Ha. Hayden chuckled lightly, a tinge of evil in the laughter. He took off his hat, took off his sunglasses, and showed his entire face to Spandam and his men. However, the reason why he showed his true colors was only to let Tom go with him. This moment of disguise unloading. The atmosphere in the carriage seemed to have solidified so that it could be cut with a real knife. Spandam and his men were stunned, and Tom was also stunned. Although they live in this place on the first half of the Great Route, they seem to be far away from things of the top level, but newspapers are something everyone will read. They know what the real identity of this person and this man who appeared before them is, and the reason why his fame has spread throughout the world. You, why are you here? After returning to his senses, Spandam couldn't say even a simple sentence completely. His expression was so stiff. Even he knew that when he encountered a character like Hayden, his life was no longer his own. I have it in my hands. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Since this guy dared to kill the Tinlongren, then this guy would dare to kill him directly. He couldn't control his footsteps and wanted to retreat. Anyway, he was trying to keep the distance from Hayden as far as possible, and even Tom, his prisoner, he didn't want to take care of him. It's over. We're over today. Spandam's men also wailed and made the same actions as their officers. At this time, they were all tightly attached to the bulkhead of the junction of the carriages, and they were barely fused into a whole. Is it for me? Tom whispered to himself. These people who are enough to cause a sensation came to this place, probably only for the boat he built. Ha. Advertisement. Hayden looked at the reaction of the guys in Spandam and expressed his satisfaction. Immediately afterwards, his tone dropped abruptly, reduced to a kind of uncontrollable hairs standing up. Well, the fun should be over, he said simply. The voice fell. In Spandam and some of his men, there is no time to beg for mercy. With a scream, Hayden's figure disappeared into everyone's eyes again as before. Hayden slapped them and motioned, "Okay, well, these can be kept until it's safe to say, we should go." After that, "Okay, Mr. Tom." Hayden patted the dust on his hands and turned to look at Tom. "You should know what I need, and I don't need to say more. Although you see me like this, I want you to understand that I am actually a good person." Tom wanted to go back to his shipbuilding company under the pier to get some things. "Mr. Tom." Tom thought to himself, a bit strange, what is coming? Boom boom boom. The corpses fell one after another on the floor of the carriage. However, since he was rescued in this way, Tom, who is a Murloc, can actually jump directly into the sea. Anyway, this human being cannot follow him in the sea. "You are the person just now," both of them exclaimed at the same time, and couldn't believe the appearance of each other. Bang bang bang. Immediately afterwards, the three of Hayden and his party secretly returned to the city of Seven Waters in the small boat that Frankie had boarded. Then, seeing this scene, Tom couldn't help swallowing his saliva. He had never seen such a quick and ruthless method. A sound of footsteps came from the roof of the carriage, and then with a thump, Frankie, who had been pushed into the sea by Hayden, appeared on the stage. Advertisement being escorted on this train was his own volition, and there was no way he could do it. However, now that something like this suddenly broke out, he had no choice but to take him along with the waves of the sea. "Yeah." Tom nodded heavily. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. It seems that my name is not well known. What will happen next? You can only follow the trend. Spandam and some of his men only felt a breeze blowing in their ears, and they suddenly discovered how their heads turned to the back. How can you see what is behind you with your eyes? Hayden thought to himself, ignoring Frankie for the time being. He looked at Tom. "We really should go," he said. But he was very aware of Hayden's strength in front of him, and the guy who was able to emerge from the siege of the Admiral 3 years ago was definitely beyond his reach. "Let's go." But at the same time, people from the world government seemed to have swarmed into their turf, rummaging for something. The shipbuilding workshop cannot be visited for the time being. "Frankie." Tom tore off the handcuffs and said to Hayden. Hayden watched his movements but was not in a hurry, and gestured to him to wait a while. "I'm coming soon," he said. "Understood." Tom nodded. He was indeed a good guy. As for other places, the three of them couldn't think of where they could go. Frankie pointed at Hayden's body and yelled. He looked down at Hayden and found that this guy had exactly the same clothes as the guy who had pushed him into the sea just now. "Who are you? Why come to rescue Mr. Tom?" This thought arose in Tom's heart for a second. Hayden was a little bit distressed. Tom's body shape was so abnormal that he couldn't easily get into the crowd at all. Chapter 282 Second Round Flower Master Previous chapter. Next chapter Advertisement Hulk Island. Fortunately, the people of the world government just wandered around Tom's workshop. The area of the Hulk Island is very large, and it is still possible to hide the three of them temporarily, but it is only temporarily. If someone comes to search it again, they will have nowhere to hide. The three of them have been in this place, hiding until the night when the sight conditions are dim, waiting for the guys from the world government to turn Tom's sight up and the floor is up, and after leaving. The three of them, holding time, went back to Tom's workshop under the pier.
At the same time, Hayden was also distressed. After saving Tom, where to go to build a boat for him? In this situation, it is obviously not realistic to let him stay in the city of Seven Waters and build a ship for himself.
Then, Hayden left Tom and Frankie to pick up some things in their shipbuilding workshop. At night, they can take advantage of the people of the world government to leave and come in temporarily, but this place is obviously no longer able to stay. They also need to find another hiding place in the city of Seven Waters, at least until the storm of Tom calms down. Hayden came to the outside of the workshop, trying to borrow the cool breeze of the night and sober. Outside the workshop under the pier, the cool night breeze just passed through. There was silence all around, except for the sound of wind blowing. There was no sound of bugs, and the area of Hulk Island was not as vibrant as a forest or a town. And the place under the bridge pier does not even have any natural light. Hayden walked along the path to the outside of the bridge pier, leaned on the railing, and looked up at the stars above his head. There is no moon tonight. Only the stars in the night sky that are like countless gravel provide some faint light to the capital of the Seven Waters and to the deserted place of Hulk Island. Whenever this time, Hayden couldn't help but think of Robin in his mind. In the daytime, he fills his brain with everything, so he doesn't keep thinking about Robin, but every time when the night is quiet, the picture of the memory rushes back into the brain, unable to calm down or think. Advertisement, waiting. Hayden looked at Robin's phantom with a blurred look. I'll finish this thing soon, he muttered to himself, wishing to convey his thoughts to Luo, who didn't know where he was at the moment. Ben. Okay. Hayden suddenly noticed something strange at this moment. Why is there someone over there walking towards here? He immediately became vigilant and prepared to attack. However, he did not immediately show his offensive intentions. Click, click, the sound of the man's shoes echoed in the space, making it particularly eye-catching. The figure is tall, bumpy and beautifully curved. A woman? Hayden couldn't help frowning. This fellow must not have gotten lost and came here, he can promise. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi, I guessed you might be here. Gradually, the woman who was approaching Hayden suddenly spoke, her voice sounding like a nightingale, and her tone seemed intriguing. When Hayden heard this, he was even more confused. What is this guy? Does he know me? Where is my perfect disguise exposed? Many questions popped up in Hayden's heart, but he didn't worry about his safety. He just wondered why his disguise was discovered and he was tracked here. Then, the seductive figure walked in front of Hayden. With the help of the starlight above his head, Hayden raised the brim of his hat to see the person's face clearly. Luo. Who are you? Hayden was so shocked that he was about to collapse, but he still resisted not letting himself scream. The face under the cowboy hat turned out to be Nicole Robin. Advertisement at this moment, she was standing quietly less than 1 meter away from Hayden, looking directly at him with her eyes. Hayden had no idea that Robin would come. He hasn't planned to meet Robin at this moment. Not only does he need a lot of things to do and cannot guarantee her safety, but also because the Navy cannot let Uncle Kuzan know that his memory has been restored. The Navy cannot be told that Nicole Robin is with him. Robin looked at Hayden now. Obviously this guy still remembered her, but this guy didn't intend to recognize him. Regarding this, her IQ far exceeds Hayden, and she probably has a guess in her heart. This guy is probably afraid that her situation will affect her. But Robin's own situation is no better than Hayden. Now that Hayden has been found, Robin will never let go. Even if there is a world government and the whole world is against both of them, she will never let Hayden go like she did when she was a child. Seeing Robin staring at him quietly, Hayden resisted the excitement in his heart and the confusion of his brain. Madam, you may have gone out of the place. You can go that way when you return to the street. While he was speaking, he pointed out the way to the street for Robin. After listening, Robin still just stared at Hayden quietly, his eyes almost staring at Hayden. This moment, the atmosphere in the air seemed awkward and silent. At the same time, the two people who were very emotional in their hearts did not notice the sudden slight noise in the surrounding environment. At this moment, there happened to be a man dressed in a suit, who looked at the world government side, and walked towards Tom's workshop. His figure came up from the stairs under the bridge pier, and when he could see the corridor outside Tom's workshop, he immediately noticed the two people standing outside. He stopped immediately, and immediately lay on the stairs, hiding his breath. Advertisement because this place should be the only person who came here now, and he just left things in the workshop before returning to fetch it. At the same time, he also thought of the situation in which Tom was rescued by a mysterious person during the day. If the people who rescued Tom had any purpose, then they would definitely return here once.
The serious world government intelligence agent immediately focused his attention on Hayden and Robin, observing the situation. At this moment, Hayden and Robin were both attracted to each other's attention, and did not notice a third person watching them nearby. Hayden. Robin gazed at Hayden, who looked down at the ground in front of him, and whispered. Hayden still didn't want to answer her thoughts. Madam, I'm not the Hayden you were talking about. But as soon as he said it, he himself didn't believe what he said. The most basic point of a lie is that you have to believe the lie you tell, but Hayden has not been able to do it. Heard this, Robin realizes that this guy seems to intend to just pretend to be like this all the time. A smile suddenly appeared on her face, which made people feel very friendly. Second round Flower Master. Suddenly the voice fell. Two slender arms grew out of Hayden's inner thigh in the blink of an eye.
Click. Well. Hayden couldn't help holding his lower body and arched his body. Chapter 283 Robin Previous Chapter Next Chapter Advertisement.
Hayden almost fell to the ground in pain. The key parts of the lower body received the most painful blow ever, and he could no longer maintain the original appearance.
R.O. Robin, you are too. The unbearable Hayden could only barely squeeze this intermittent sentence from the gap between his mouth. As for Robin, who started Hayden, she didn't seem to care.
So, do you know me now? She faintly said to Hayden. Under the space of this bridge pier, it was like the sound of night.
Hayden nodded heavily and answered Robin.
The two were silent for a moment. Hayden removed the camouflage from his face, and Robin took off the cowboy hat at the same time. This moment, with the help of starlight, the two of them could see each other's faces completely. Although it must be different from when I was a child, my facial features can still find my childhood memories. Robin. Hayden. The two of them looked at each other's eyes, and they could see the twinkling light in each other's eyes. They didn't say a word for a long time, just hugged each other. However, in the dark at the same time. Advertisement. The intelligence agent hiding in the sidelines paid attention to this scene, this astonishing scene. From the beginning to the present, he has not let go of all the details. The legendary son of the devil, Nicole Robin, and the fallen navy that they secretly called the Death God. The two of them are in this situation, as if they knew each other a long time ago.
The god of death and the son of the devil walked together. The two embracing each other seemed to be covered with a layer of stars at this moment.
In the eyes of the intelligence agent at this moment, the aura, and so on around the two of them seemed to be born for each other and exist for each other.
Just like the natural harmony and match of nature. That's awful, the intelligence agent murmured. A figure who can interpret the text of history and a figure who is powerful and daring to kill the Tinlongren came together, and now things are really going to be a big deal. He couldn't imagine what kind of chain reaction the two people would bring together, but he knew that he had to report the information in front of him immediately. The intelligence officer was very cautious and did his best to make no noise. He took out a spy-type camera phone worm from his pocket, and then took out a small contact phone worm. While taking pictures of Hayden and Nicole Robin standing together, he quickly dialed his superiors and reported what was happening before him. Very quickly. The intelligence is passed to the hands of the world government, and the world government is passed to the Navy headquarters. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Tonight, the world government and Navy headquarters are very lively. The sudden news made them give up the idea of rest, and hurriedly discussed a plan for Hayden's meeting with Nicole Robin.
At the same time, in order to arrest Nicole Robin during the day, the team set out for the city of Seven Waters to stand by temporarily. The appearance of Hayden made those guys in the Navy headquarters dare not stun the snake. They once again assembled a team to increase their troops to the city of Seven Waters.
And the strength of the team assembled these 2 times, in the words of those seamen who participated in this mission, their naval fleet this time is simply stronger than the configuration of the demon-killing order.
At the same time, advertisement. Hayden and Robin, who were deeply attracted by each other, did not notice that they were not far away. There was a guy from the world government who had notified them of their situation, and the huge naval fleet was moving towards them. Go ahead. Under normal circumstances, it is of course impossible for this intelligence officer to obtain this kind of information easily, but this situation is very special now.
Immediately afterwards, Tom and Frankie suddenly walked out of the workshop by pushing the door, interrupting Hayden and Robin. And this happened to Tom. Some of the intelligence agents who were already prepared in their hearts were shocked.
It really was Tom who was saved by the god of death.
A god of death, one who can interpret the text of history, and one who must have ancient weapons, the drawings of Pluto. Those guys got together, what are they going to do? The information received at a time was so much and too explosive that it caused the intelligence agent's brain to stop functioning for a second. After
a while, stunned, he immediately recovered. If the situation where the death god and the son of the devil appeared together was not surprising enough, Then the Murloc with the drawings of Pluto has also joined their team. The intelligence officer realized that the situation before him was obviously far beyond what he could understand and reach. He immediately reported the latest situation. Soon, he got the above instructions, ordering him to leave that place quickly. Now that he knew that the person was there, he definitely couldn't alarm those guys. Although I don't know how the intelligence agent got close and obtained such important information, if this guy stays for a while, he will definitely be noticed by that Hayden.
After Tom came out of the workshop, after seeing the person next to Hayden in front of him, he was greatly frightened for the second time within a day.
It seems that God thinks that they are not too troublesome enough. After a troublesome figure rescued him, there was another figure who was enough to make the world government jump.
Advertisement, Nicole Robin. Tom stared at Robin and said in a deep voice, he didn't know what to think at this moment. And Frankie next to him couldn't understand the situation at the moment. There were so many things happening in one day that he couldn't understand it for a while. Tom looked at Hayden, then at Robin, and the two men in front of him seemed to be familiar with each other. One is a guy who is bold enough to kill the Tinlongren, and the other is the only woman in the world who can interpret the text of history and has been hunted down by the world government.
Of course, these two guys must know each other. Tom thought to himself, not knowing why he came up with ideas that the two of them didn't recognize.
Okay. Hayden said to Tom, we will talk about the situation now, we should leave this place. Yeah. Tom agreed with little by little immediately. However, where can we go now? The places I often go to are obviously no longer able to go. He didn't have the answer to this question. Frankie also didn't expect that the place could be a place for a few of them to hide. If you go to Espagu, that is, the guy at Bingshan, or Granny Kokolo, they will definitely be affected. Just when the three of them were distressed. I know that place can be temporarily rested. Robin's voice suddenly rang between them. Heard this. Hayden laughed immediately, for no reason, just simply happy. Afterwards, Robin took the three of them secretly to a house on the edge of the town of Seven Waters, and came to the place where she had hidden before. Chapter 284 The Navy's Invincible Fleet. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Hiding place. At this moment, Hayden and his party can finally breathe a sigh of relief. As far as Hayden is concerned, it is more suitable for him to directly drive Wushuang alone. As it is now, it is necessary to prevent undetected situations, which is really not in line with his line. However, the reality is like this, and he had no choice but to proceed according to the current situation. Inside the house. The group of them can finally have a good conversation about each other's affairs. Robin brought each of them a cup of hot water from the kitchen. Hayden, Robin, Tom, Frankie. At this time, the four of them were all sitting around the only table in the house, looking at each other. Hayden did not look at Robin for the time being. He needs to clarify his affairs with Tom and state his position. He doesn't want Tom to treat him as a bad person, and then wait for him to build his own ship, leaving behind something like a back door, and causing any trouble. He needs Tom to trust him from the bottom of his heart, not after agreeing on the surface, and then secretly making trouble for him. Tom, you should know why I saved you. Hayden looked directly into Tom's eyes. You should have read my recent report on him in the newspaper. I will organize a team to overthrow the brutal rule of the world government. I believe you have had a deep understanding of the current state of the world government before. Tom stared at Hayden as well. Hearing this, he recalled what happened to him in the harbor during the day. Whether it is good or bad, everything is determined by the world government. Advertisement. These civilians have no chance to resist at all. If they dare to resist, only brutal suppression will come. Tom did not speak, watching Hayden beckoning him to continue. Hayden noticed the expression on Tom's face, and he became a little serious, and it seemed that the guy's emotions were a bit mobilized. So he went on to say, moreover, for myself, overthrowing the rule of the world government is not complete. I have to clean up all the pirates in the sea. Let the people of the world go to sea without worrying about the looting of pirates, nor do they need to worry about their hometown that day being burned by pirates who do not know where they came from. The words fall. Hayden's slightly agitated tone made the atmosphere in the room seem shocked by his ideals, and it fell silent for a moment. Tom, Frankie, and Robin did not expect that the true ideal in Hayden's heart would actually be like this. In Tom's personal opinion, He remembered that he had read the information about this kid. He grew up in the Navy and was forced to leave the Navy because of the killing of the Tianlong people. He was chased by people from the world government, and then disappeared for 3 years and suddenly appeared. The first thing he did, he immediately killed a newly promoted Kiwahai. All these are combined together. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Tom thought he was a little devil at his current age, but his strength surpassed more than half of the people on the sea. The reason why he came to build a ship by himself was just to dominate the sea or something. Did not expect. This kid actually has such an amazing, but such a simple dream in his heart. Seeing the true emotions that Hayden exudes in front of him, Tom couldn't help thinking in his heart, it seemed that this kid, as he said, was purely for this dream. And Robin on the side. Advertisement for the first time in so long, she heard Hayden say something like that, and the meaning of the words surprised her. The emotions in her heart are very emotional and complicated. At the same time, she also had many questions in her heart. Why didn't Hayden come to her before? Why he joined the Navy? The atmosphere was silent for a while. Tom looked directly into Hayden's eyes, and he spoke slowly. I promised to build a ship for you, but you also know the current situation. Besides, shipbuilding materials and costs are also a problem now. As Hayden listened, he was thinking about these questions in his heart. Obviously, these situations and problems cannot be resolved within a few days, and it is estimated that it will take a while. Helpless Hayden can only nod his head at this time to show that he understands, and he immediately tells Tom, wait for a while. After that, having said things clearly and after understanding each other, Tom took Frankie out of the living room first, leaving Hayden and Robin alone in this room. The atmosphere in the room suddenly changed slightly. Hayden seemed to use his eyes to see the strange change in the space at this time. The color of the room seemed to be gradually turning to pale pink, and there seemed to be a fragrance in the air, and even the temperature of the room was slowly rising. Afterwards, Hayden and Robin suddenly hugged each other without saying a word. The Navy headquarters at the same moment. The huge naval fleet was finally assembled at this time. Advertisement: 15 naval ships with the highest configuration, 10,000 elite Navy and Marines, several lieutenants of the Navy headquarters, and the Navy chief who leads this invincible fleet. Navy headquarters Lieutenant Admiral Kuzan, Navy headquarters Lieutenant Admiral Sikarsky, Navy headquarters General Zepha, and Navy headquarters generals are about to be promoted to marshals warring states. For the world government and the Navy, Hayden's sudden appearance made them extremely vigilant. This kid is haunted all day long. The last time he appeared was in the New World. He went to the capital of 7 Waters this time. You can't stun the snake, you must seize this opportunity and give him a thunderous blow. The next day, early morning, the city of 7 Waters just opened its dim, sleepy eyes. In the sea area still some distance away from the city of 7 Waters, there are a dozen naval warships that are slowly sailing. With such a large fleet, it is impossible to hide it from other people on the sea. The Navy didn't want to hide anything. They just hoped to take advantage of the night, while Hayden and others were resting, rush to the city of 7 Waters as quickly as possible, and then hit them by surprise. Those pirates who just sailed into this sea area, or merchant ships, etc., saw the Navy fleet in front of them, all being restrained by the Navy's posture, and then they wondered whether it was that guy. Let the Navy move out of this posture. Simultaneously, even if it was still early in the morning, they all took out the phone bugs, contacted people in other places, and paid attention to the movements of the Navy. This is because the Navy's creation of such a big scene is obviously not a trivial matter. Uncertainty will affect people they know. The news of the naval fleet's dispatch was like wildfire. By the time the fleet was about to reach the offshore area of the city of 7 Waters, the news almost spread to the islands near the city of 7 Waters. Everyone knows that the Navy seemed to go crazy early in the morning and assembled a huge fleet. Drive to the city of 7 Waters. Chapter 285 Crisis. Run with time. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. At this time, the east was widening, and the noisy birds broke the silence of the earth. Inside the hiding place, Hayden and his party also woke up before and after sleep. However, it was originally only a hiding place for Robin alone, and there was no extra food for the 3 of them. Therefore, the only Frankie who was able to show up easily, went out to buy supplies early in the morning to prepare Mr. Tom and the others for a long stay here. After walking to the street, Frankie hadn't noticed anything abnormal at first, but when he walked near the center of the town, he immediately noticed the abnormality in the town. Usually at this time, the vendors in the market have already started business, but today, the number of vendors opening the door is simply pitiful. The streets are also in a mess, and everywhere they look like they have not been cleaned. Suddenly, one person ran over from the direction of the dock in a panic, with the expression on his face as if he had seen something terrifying before. The man turned a blind eye to Frankie and passed by him. Then, before Frankie figured out what happened, a second person ran back from the direction of the dock in a panic. His expression was almost the same as the situation of the first person before. Then came the third, the fourth, did not wait for a few seconds. A large group of people ran back from the direction of the pier, as if everyone in this town were all in that group. Everyone had a look of horror on their faces, and some were even shouting. "This island is over, we are over, run quickly, leave this island, hurry up and pack up and leave." Advertisement anyway, it's words like this. In Frankie's ears, the meaning of these words was as if the capital of the Seven Waters was about to encounter some great disaster. Hey hey hey. Frankie took a guy who was running back in his hand. What happened? He hurriedly asked toward the person he was holding. "Don't pull me." The man tried to shake off Frankie's hand. "The Navy fleet is coming. The Navy's invincible fleet is coming." His tone was full of fear. The picture he saw on the dock just now showed that the Navy's battleship was like no money, and the muzzles of the black holes were all aimed at their Seven Waters city. Obviously, there is some terrible guy hiding in their city of Seven Waters, and he did not hesitate to let the Navy show the attitude of destroying that guy even if it destroys the city of Seven Waters. No matter what the Navy is fighting with. This city of Seven Waters, and ordinary citizens living on it, are an incidental price. No one will care about their life and death. Only they can find a way out of this island. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Let me go. The man who was held by Frankie broke free of his palm abruptly, and at the same time awakened Frankie, who was stunned. Immediately afterwards, Frankie, who had recovered, immediately began to run towards the pier. There is still a glimmer of hope in his heart, hoping that the situation is not as bad as the guy just said. If it is really as he described, then things will be troublesome. Soon, Frankie came to the dock. At this moment, the Navy's huge fleet has appeared on the sea horizon, one by one, occupying all the sea horizon area in Frankie's line of sight. The Navy's dispatch this time is serious, advertisement. Frankie stared at the distant picture, sweating on his back, and instantly wet the clothes behind him. A chill rushed from his back to his neck. The Navy can send such a terrifying fleet, it will certainly not end in a peaceful situation. No way. I must go tell Mr. Tom about them right away. Frankie was naturally not a fool. He immediately thought of the reason why the Navy sent a fleet to their capital of Seven Waters. They can't hide in the city of Seven Waters, they must immediately escape from the island. Immediately, Frankie dashed towards their previous hiding place, using a speed that had never been reached in this generation. For their situation at the moment, even the minutes must be contested. After a while, time passed. Frankie arrived at their hiding place last night, so fast that he could barely breathe. However, Hayden and the others were already standing at the door waiting for him at this time. Hayden was also aware of the advent of the naval fleet at the same time. After all, the feeling of a big unknown on the sea really made him unable to ignore it. As if it was, that piece of sky and sea were all manic. Hayden no longer had any smile from yesterday. For him, if he encountered this situation alone, he could just fly away. He can barely even add a robin. But, I came here exclusively for Tom, and if I abandon them now in such a situation, then I am a few of them. Not to mention, it must be because I didn't know how to expose it that would attract such a huge naval fleet. If it weren't for him, how could there be anything in the city of Seven Waters that would attract such a powerful naval fleet? Advertisement, by. Hayden cursed secretly, frowning. Although he couldn't think of a solution at this time, Hayden knew that they couldn't stand stupidly here either. So, the group of them hurriedly left this place. Go as far as possible to the opposite direction of the naval fleet's attack, and run to the other side of the city of Seven Waters to see if there are any ships on that side, and you can directly take all of them away from the island. Shuttle among the towns of the city of Seven Waters. Looking at the naval fleet before, The citizens of the City of Seven Waters are now carrying large bags and trying to escape the island. Some plan to take the last sea train, some plan to sit on their own ships, and some plan to board the first-come world government's refuge ship. Anyway, the residents of the City of Seven Waters all want to escape from the City of Seven Waters that has instantly become an ominous land. Hayden and Robin looked at the surrounding environment at the moment, and they reminded them of O'Hara 10 years ago. At that time, the situation of the residents on the island was almost the same as the current situation. Everyone was panicked. Everyone wanted to escape from their hometown where they grew up and never looked back. At this time, the careful Hayden immediately noticed that Robin's hands were trembling next to him. He instinctively grabbed Robin's right hand and tried to calm her emotions. Robin gave Hayden a reflexive look, trying to break free from Hayden's hands. But Hayden's hands were as hard as steel. She couldn't shake Hayden at all. However, Hayden's palms were not as cold as steel, but as warm as the afternoon sun. The group of them was mixed in the crowd, heading toward the other side of the island at a swift speed. Now the Navy is not their enemy, but the time passing by is their enemy. Chapter 286 come from the Revolutionary Army previous chapter. Next chapter advertisement. Suddenly, a strange guy appeared on the road ahead. He didn't care about his surroundings at all, and focused all his attention on the road ahead at the moment. Hayden found a guy in a cloak ahead. The guy showed an expression that seemed to know a few of them, and blocked their way forward. Navy? There was a guess about the person's identity in Hayden, and he didn't say a word, and at the same time he was ready to take action. Similarly, Robin and Tom next to Hayden, both of them also noticed the strange guy in front of them. In the situation where the residents of the town are all running towards the pier, except for Hayden and his party, they are running against the flow of people to the other side of the City of Seven Waters. And that strange guy, like a big rock in the river, stood on the street, standing on the path of Hayden's group, motionless, and at the same time, his eyes were tightly locked on Hayden and the others. After Hayden glanced at Robin aside, he immediately increased his own speed and separated from the team. Then, he rushed directly to the weird guy not far in front, trying to kill that person directly. Huh! Hayden's figure suddenly came to the strange guy. The speed of his running not only brought up the disguise of himself, but also brought up the head of the weird guy. Hayden had already thrown his fist at the man. Of course, he didn't use much force, just a random wave. Immediately afterwards, it was between this electric light and flint. The guy whose cloak was lifted by Hayden's fist, he suddenly yelled. Hold on! At the same time he also gestured to Hayden to stop. Advertisement. Okay. Hayden didn't feel that this person had killing intent against them, but he seemed to know them. Suspicious, he stopped his fist and stopped less than 2 centimeters from the tip of the man's nose. Boom! The powerful fist wind immediately blew this person's face a bit hideously. After a while, he recovered, with a trace of shock remaining on his face. But he didn't care that his ugliness showed up. Looking at the fist in the middle of his eyes, he said to Hayden without hesitation. I am here for you, hurry up and follow me. We can safely take you out of the range of the Navy. His tone was a little anxious and nervous, and he didn't consume useless time anymore. Where did this guy come from? Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Hayden couldn't help thinking, slowly retracting his fist in front of this man. At this time, Robin, Tom and Frankie in the rear, and several of them also followed. Seeing Hayden stop in front of the stranger, they felt a little puzzled. What do you stand for? Hayden immediately asked this person, and fixed his gaze on the person in front of him. If there is no answer that satisfies me, you should know what will happen. There is no emotion in his tone, as if the surrounding air the breath in is not right. At this moment, Robin and Tom and Frankie stood around this man, surrounding the stranger who had suddenly appeared. He has no chance of escape. Hayden and his party are waiting for this person's answer. Gudong. Advertisement. The man stared at by 4 pairs of eyes. He couldn't help swallowing saliva. He felt a great pressure at this moment. Of course, it was mainly from the pressure of Hayden on his front. It seems that the feeling at this moment makes all the things he has experienced in the past seem to be a little pediatric. Under this suffocating pressure, I am here on behalf of the Revolutionary Army, he blurted out immediately. As if it was also to release the pressure accumulated in his heart, his volume seemed a bit too high. Revolutionary Army. Hayden murmured subconsciously. Then, just listening, the man continued. Our Revolutionary Army intercepted intelligence from the Navy headquarters last night, for the sake of Miss Robin, Mr. Tom, and finally you, Mr. Hayden. Our team rushed to the City of Seven Waters overnight. When he said this, he paused, fingered their left position, and continued. On the other side of the City of Seven Waters, there are ships that we use to escape the Navy. We must go now. His tone was very anxious. Now every second of staying here, those navies will be closer to the capital of Seven Waters, and the chances of them all surviving will be lower. Hearing this, Hayden stared at the man's eyes suddenly. At the same time, the spiritual pressure on his body couldn't help overflowing, until he stared at this person so much that he couldn't help his body tremble, and he understood that everything this person said was true. He ignored this person from the Revolutionary Army for the time being. He looked at Robin and Tom beside him and said, "Well, we will follow the Revolutionary Army team for the time being and leave here first." Robin had heard of the Revolutionary Army, and Tom had also heard of the Revolutionary Army. The world government proclaims that they are a group of evil organizations, but they know that the facts are generally contrary to what the world government said. Robin and Tom also agreed to leave the island with the Revolutionary Army for the time being. Advertisement. Seeing Robin nodding, Hayden couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although I don't know how great the Revolutionary Army guys are and can actually come to the City of Seven Waters for a few of them, Hayden will not consider these small issues for the time being as long as everyone's safety is guaranteed. Then, this member of the Revolutionary Army saw Hayden and they agreed to follow them. The Revolutionary Army left here. He immediately took out a small telephone bug from his pocket and prepared to inform others to find Hayden and his party and scattered in the Seven Waters comrades on all. "Hey, I got someone here. You guys hurry to the scheduled evacuation location, we will come right away." Soon, a happy voice came from the phone worm, to understanding. After that, after a short period of time, Hayden and his party followed the unexpected reinforcements, the comrades of the Revolutionary Army, to the pier on the other side of the City of Seven Waters. Immediately afterwards, what catches everyone's eyes at the pier is not an ordinary ship. It is a slender ship that almost sacrifices other aspects and only considers speed. There was a man standing on that deck, waving at their party. Hurry up!" the man on the boat shouted, waving his arms. And the person from the Revolutionary Army who led the way responded immediately, "Get ready to go." After he finished speaking, he immediately turned to look at Hayden and his party. "Everyone, move faster. It will take a while." Robin and the others nodded, did not speak, and began to step on the planks they had prepared in advance and step onto the ship. However, Hayden, who was walking at the back, grabbed Robin's right hand and stopped her. He has something to say to Robin, even though it will not make Robin feel better. Chapter 287. You go first, I'll come later. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Hayden and Robin stood on the gangway to board the ship. And under the thin planks of the gangway, gently stroking the waves on the shore, he stared into her eyes and said calmly to her, "You go first, I'll follow in a while." Hayden needs to stay temporarily to allow Robin and the others to leave the Navy's hunting range, and delay a little time, because in this situation, they obviously can't escape those Navy warships. And this Hayden was not referring to the naval battleships themselves. In front of them, they sacrificed other aspects and built for speed to escape ships. Those naval battleships still far away were not enough to pose any problems. The thing that constitutes the problem, Hayden refers to the guys who appeared on the battleship. Hearing Hayden's words, the keen Robin immediately realized what Hayden meant and what he planned to do when he stayed. "Let's go together," Robin blurted out without thinking. She didn't want Hayden to stay alone. From the beginning to the present, everything that happened before her eyes was like O'Hara's incident repeating itself. They now only have the option of escaping from the City of Seven Waters, and a day after the reunion with Hayden hasn't arrived yet. Hayden actually intends to block the Navy for her. Thinking of this, Robin's eyes couldn't help but see crystal tears. She didn't want to be like this, she didn't want Hayden to be like this. Seeing Robin like this, Hayden felt as if his heart was pinched, and an indescribable sense of suffocation instantly swept his whole body. However, this matter is something he must do, and only he has the strength to do it. Hayden resisted the emotion in his heart, not letting it show through. Advertisement. His right hand stroked Robin's cheek. Staring at the face in front of him that seemed like nothing in the world, he brushed the teardrops in Robin's eyes with the thumb of his right hand, and said softly, "Let go, Robin. I am no longer the way I was when I was a kid." Robin was silent. Seeing that Hayden didn't speak, his hands couldn't help grasping Hayden's hands tightly. However, after Hayden said that to Robin, he directly let go. The figure jumped into the air, standing in the air about 5 or 6 meters above the crowd. He did not dare to look at Robin's direction again. He looked down at the Revolutionary Army who had brought them here. "Where shall I find you afterwards?" he asked immediately. Afterwards, the guy from the Revolutionary Army told Hayden the location. Then when everyone didn't react, Hayden's figure disappeared into the air above their heads with a scream. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi, after leaving Robin and others. Hayden stepped on the clumps of spirits he had created in the air, and galloped toward the Navy fleet at this moment. The naval fleet is now away from the City of Seven Waters and from the pier where Robin and the others are at the moment. In fact, speaking of the distance between them, it is not too far to say that it is far, and it is not too close to it. Under Hayden's high-speed travel, in a short while, he arrived not far in front of the naval fleet area. At this moment, a dozen naval warships lined up on the blue sea. It was like the kind of fishing net with very small gaps. As long as the fish that appeared in front of the net, they would all be shrouded and swallowed by this terrifying big net. There was no room for salvation. Advertisement at this time. Seeing Hayden, the Right Master, came to their fleet, dozens of warships seemed to be controlled by one person, and at the same time they stopped their advancing trend and stopped steadily above the sea. And Hayden at the moment, standing in the air about 30 or 40 meters in front of the Navy's invincible fleet, with arms crossed on his chest, he looked down at the scenery below. The floral shirt on him fluttered under the blowing of the sea breeze. Except for the black blindfold, all the disguise on his face was taken off by himself. At this time, tens of thousands of elite Marines on dozens of warships, and a lieutenant admiral equipped on each ship. Anyway, all the Navy, at this moment, all looked up at the figure in the air ahead. Although there have been rumors before, the guy who used to be their companion could be suspended in the air without a moonstep, but when they saw it with their own eyes, they saw that Hayden was standing in the air with nothing, as if standing on a flat ground. It's hard to imagine. Moreover, he did not show any signs of using external tools. They didn't know that this time the higher level assembled a fleet that was even more terrifying than the Demon Slayer. Was it really just to deal with that one person? Or, the strength of that person is so terrifying. Hayden didn't know when and where he exposed his disguise. This led to the arrival of this huge fleet. However, in this situation today, it is not his own misfortune, but the luck of the Navy fleet in front of him. If he didn't meet Robin last night, if he was blocked by the naval fleet alone, then it would happen that one leg of the world government was cut off in advance. Unfortunately, Advertisement. Hayden stared at the naval fleet below, and couldn't help but think inside, that today's situation is not yet the time for the final battle. At this time the naval fleet below, the warring states, Zepha, Kuzan, and Sikarsky, 4 of them stood on the bow of a warship in the middle position. Looking at the figure above, it was indeed Hayden who hadn't seen him for a long time. At the same time in their hearts, they couldn't help but recall the state of the demon that this kid turned into 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Hayden was able to contend with these few of them by relying on that kind of demonic state. Now, they began to secretly estimate in their hearts where Hayden had grown up. The 4 of the warring states exchanged their eyes and nodded silently. At this moment, Kuzan took a step forward and looked at Hayden above slowly and said, "Hayden, what are you going to do now?" This may seem like a question, but in fact, both parties know the answer to this question. From the moment Hayden killed the 2 Dracos, he became an enemy of the world government and an enemy of the Navy. Now it can only end with 2 results. One is that Hayden is killed or caught by them, and the other is that they are all killed by Hayden. However, there is a different result in Hayden's heart. "What am I going to do?" Hayden said to himself, and then he smiled, facing Kuzan below, and the uncle warring states next to him, and said, "I intend to make the world peaceful and make the world a better place. It is good." As he said, he took off the 2 Zhanpakudao knives that were entangled with gray cloth on his back. Bit by bit, slowly removing the cloth strips from the knives. When Kuzan and Warring States heard these words, they didn't react. They were not angry or smiled, just as if Hayden was talking about ordinary things. Is it? Kuzan asked Hayden back, if you want to make the world better, why do you want to make this already messy world worse? Chapter 288 Bad. In the count. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Wait. Hayden interrupted Kuzan. What made me make the world worse? He continued, his expression a little puzzled, if you mean killing those two celestials. When Hayden said this, he paused. Then you don't have to thank me, that is what everyone who can't see this terrible world will do in such a situation. At this moment, Hayden's emotions were disturbed by his own thoughts, and his expression seemed a bit irrational and a bit agitated. Listening to Hayden's words, the Kuzan Four did not continue to speak. At this time, Hayden looked at Uncle Kuzan. He remembered when he had just crossed over, and remembered what happened on O'Hara Island more than 10 years ago. It is a fact that Uncle Kuzan chose to leave him with his life in the end. It is also a fact that Uncle Kuzan didn't tell him what happened before his memory loss. To be honest, if Kuzan hadn't chosen to keep him, he wouldn't be here now. Although to some extent the enemy saw him pitifully and left him with his life, I shouldn't be grateful for it either. However, Hayden had no personal grudges against Kuzan in his heart. In the same situation, he felt the same for Teacher Zephyr, who is now his enemy. Teacher Zephyr defeated countless pirates in his life, but never killed any pirate, and was called the not killing general. Later, he ended up brutally murdered by the pirates. Later, the naval practice ship he led was attacked by pirates. Except for the two students who survived by chance, his right arm was also cut off by the pirate who attacked them. And in the end, even if he gave his life to the Navy and the world government, he betrayed him at the last moment. Teacher Zephyr gave almost everything he had along the way for the justice in his heart. Advertisement. But although today is not the time for the final battle, Hayden must block them and block the entire invincible fleet in front of him. He can't get closer to him for a meter. Hayden squeezed Senbon Sakura with his left hand, and Shirayuki's sleeve with his right hand. With focused eyes and relaxed muscles, he has adjusted his body to the most suitable state for fighting. Same. The 4 Sengoku members standing on the bow, as well as the lieutenant generals and tens of thousands of elite naval forces behind them, were all ready for battle at the same time. At this moment when the air ceases to circulate. For both sides of each other, all it takes is a natural signal or a white cloud in the sky, or the call of a seabird in the sky. The war is about to trigger. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. But Hayden, who was about to swing the knife directly, suddenly realized that something was wrong. Why didn't they make a move just now? Why do they have to chat with themselves? They clearly knew that the conversation just now didn't get any results at all. Oops. Hayden instantly knew what the wrong feeling was coming from. He immediately scanned all the warships on the sea in front of him. Although these warships are exactly the same, it is easy to mix them together and be confused, but Hayden clearly remembers that there were only 17 warships in total, but now there are only 16 remaining. Advertisement. There is one more. His body was as straight as a sharp arrow, piercing through the obstacles of the air, and flew towards the Navy ship in the distance in his eyes at a super high speed. What is this little soldier bothering him doing now? However, why they did not hesitate to destroy the entire island more than 10 years ago, that is because that island is full of scholars doing research on historical texts. All his attention has been placed on the ship in front of their ship at this moment, and the people on that ship are also ready to counterattack their arrival. The Ghost Spider is a little impatient at this time. Lieutenant General, there are more capable little ghosts, but this one is bolder, nothing more. The faces of Zephyr and Warring States were like dark clouds before the rainstorm. Although I don't know how there was a fish that slipped through the net, the world government has no plans to let the fish slip through the net. On the naval ship in Hayden's eyes, the seaman at the stern noticed Hayden's movement and hurriedly ran towards the bow of the ship, reporting it to their Ghost Spider Lieutenant General. It seemed that he thought that Hayden could rush to Robin and the others before the Ghost Spider Lieutenant General who was about to rush there. This question popped up in Hayden's mind, and reflexively turned around and looked in the direction of Robin at this moment. Boom, this trick is terrible, but it is also a means needed in special circumstances now. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. Huh, you go if you want. Sakaski crossed his arms across his chest. Even though he had seen Hayden's strength, he didn't think Hayden could be faster than a ghost spider in such a short time. Then, what caught his eyes was a flying slash shining with silver light. Advertisement, what? Have you reacted? Sarkarski muttered to himself as he looked at the distant figure of Hayden. Something is coming behind us. As long as the ghost spider grabs that Robin and his other companions in his hands, the kind, compassionate, and valued little devil dare not make any moves at all. Perhaps, he does not dare to do anything at all. Shot. If you compare the only thing in the world that can interpret the text of history, and a little devil with a little bit of strength, who is just brave but dare to kill the world's nobles, and compare them to the harm to the world government. To catch the little devil's companion is tantamount to attacking the little devil's weakness. Thinking of this, Sarkarski couldn't help but lift a smile on his gloomy face. Do you want to go there? It seems that it takes less than a minute to catch them and then catch them. Don't think about it, of course Robin, who can interpret the historical text, is more harmful. On the two warships next to the Sakaski warship, Zephyr and Warring States couldn't help but stare at each other. The ghost spider with an impatient look turned his head to look in the direction of the stern of the boat. Bad. Hayden cursed, turning around and glaring at Kuzan and the others behind him at the moment. Then, his body suddenly started, and disappeared in front of the Navy fleet in the blink of an eye at a speed that Kuzan and the others could not have. Immediately afterwards, I saw a Navy battleship, heading towards Robin and their ship, and the Navy battleship had already reached the sea very close to Robin and them. Kuzan squinted his eyes and looked at the direction Hayden had passed. For their Navy, for the world government. Hayden's stepping in the air was so strong that it was unimaginable that he didn't even need to step in the air a second time. Just a single kick was enough to keep him in the air for a long time. Chapter 289 Man and Boat Previous chapter Next chapter. Advertisement, not good, he secretly said, and immediately drew a sword in front of him. Boom. The silver flying slash directly hit the ghost spider's sword, and a powerful shock wave spread from the contact point to the surrounding deck. A seaman who was not paying attention to the ghost spider was all knocked down by this sudden shock wave, on the deck. Subsequently, the flying slash pushed the ghost spider's body all the way back, and even pushed his body to the side of the ship, leaning against the ship's side. The ghost spider gritted his teeth and stubbornly resisted the detached sword energy in front of him. At this time, he finally cancelled out the power of this slash, but the sword he used to resist this slash also disappeared in the wind as the slash disappeared. This guy's slash. The ghost spider couldn't control the cold sweat on his forehead, and he stared at Hayden in front of him, with a trace of horror in his heart. The strength of this guy can be seen from the blow just now. He is definitely not the opponent of this guy himself, he must call Da Future or the two natural guys. Thinking about this, the ghost spider wiped away the cold sweat from his forehead, and at the same time turned all the sabers on his body into arms with his own hair, and held it tightly. Although not an opponent, he did not give up the idea of fighting. At the same time, Hayden, who was a step slower than his own slash, arrived here at the last moment when the Navy swarmed to Robin and them. Hayden first glanced at Robin and their ship, and noticed that Robin was standing at the stern and nodded at him, saying that there was no problem. He then moved his gaze to the Navy ship under him at this moment. Advertisement also at the same time. On the side of the naval force, they watched Hayden's figure flying away. The remaining 16 naval warships also took advantage of this opportunity to draw closer to Hayden and theirs. The focus of the two parties gradually moved away from the island of the City of Seven Waters and began to shift to the offshore area next to the island. Robin and the ship boarded by the Revolutionary Army. Before they had time to sail out of the waters near the capital of Seven Waters, they were already overtaken by naval warships. And the large naval fleet led by the Warring States and others, taking advantage of Hayden's departure, narrowed the distance between the gaps, perhaps even 2 or 3 nautical miles away. Hayden could feel the tremendous pressure in the space at this moment like a tide. He couldn't hesitate to spend time on the single ship below. Think about it this way. Hayden looked down at the lower eyes and condensed, without saying a word, directly two flying slashes that almost overlapped, slammed toward the naval battleship below. "Ah! Lord Admiral!" The Marines on the lower deck immediately screamed, and there was a commotion on the ship. They were not unseen seamen. They naturally knew how powerful the two flying slashes would be. Not to mention two slashes, even if it was just that one slash, it would be able to directly slash the warship under their feet into two pieces. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The Ghost Spider Lieutenant also understands this truth. For this slash that hit them directly, he could only choose to resist it, and there was no other way. "Calm down," he yelled sharply, motioning his subordinates to control his emotions. Then, he stomped on the deck under his feet, and his body full of strength suddenly jumped and raised. At the same time, he will use his hair and hands to grasp the 7 long swords. The blades are all aimed at Hayden's slash, with the help of the power of the whole body. Greet them. Next moment, advertisement, a row of terrifying blades slashed on Hayden's sword aura. The huge forces of the two sides collided, a strong shock wave burst out, and the air wave visible to the naked eye instantly swept the surroundings. Not only blew the sails of the Navy where they were fighting, but also blew the sails of Robin and others on the ship next to him. Then, there was a loud bang. And the seamen on this warship, they all understand this irretrievable fact. Several cracks appeared at the edge of the big hole in an instant. The cracks were less than 2 or 3 seconds long and spread to the entire warship. The Ghost Spider's body is like an armor-piercing bullet, hitting the deck of a warship as if hitting jelly, and pierced directly into it. Hayden shifted his gaze to his rear, which was the direction from which the Navy fleet was approaching. Oops! A simple silver slash burst out of the sword immediately. A bloody water that looked like a fountain splashed out of the Ghost Spider's body immediately. Against the background of the blue sky, it is particularly conspicuous. Hayden no longer paid attention to the warship under his feet. He then looked in the direction of Robin and the others at the moment. He nodded towards Robin and the others, as well as the other people on the ship. Immediately afterwards, the Sengoku and others who hadn't waited to see this scene reacted. The warship is out of rescue. A large amount of seawater poured in from the big hole in the bottom of the ship, and the overall structure of the warship was also greatly damaged by this blow. The Ghost Spider was more than half the size of an ordinary person, and it was like a cannonball being fired, slamming straight towards the Navy ship below. The flying slash was offset by the full defense of the Ghost Spider. Advertisement: the Ghost Spider's time in the air also disappeared at this moment, and its body began to fall toward the deck. He held his sleeve Shirayuki at the chest of the Ghost Spider, and briefly waved it as if he was making gestures to the air. Although there is a distance between him and Robin and he can't clearly see each other's expressions, their minds seem to have crossed the barrier of space, and they understand what the other is thinking at the moment. This also happened to push Robin and his ship slightly away from the area where Hayden was fighting with the Navy. However, a big hole that went directly to the bottom of the ship was not finished by the Ghost Spider. Slash in the chest of the Ghost Spider. Breaking through the deck, breaking through the cabin, and finally piercing the entire warship, the body immediately smashed into the sea. And at the moment when Ghost Spider's old power disappeared, and the new power hadn't been connected, Hayden suddenly moved in the air. The state of the Ghost Spider at this time is an excellent opportunity for Hayden. Hayden's figure suddenly appeared in front of the Ghost Spider out of thin air, less than a body in the air. Seeing the shocked look of the Ghost Spider at the moment, he didn't have any thoughts. Subsequently, Slash contains super high concentration of spiritual pressure and all the swordsmanship experience from Hayden in the past 10 years. It seems to be just an ordinary blow, but in fact it is full of infinite power. Oops. After an instant. Oops. This is from the Ghost Spider himself, as well as the psychological activities of the Sengoku and others who can feel the power of Hayden's strike not far away. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. Almost only a second or two passed. Chapter 290 Ice Age. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement: the Navy fleet is still arranged as before. Lined up, occupying almost all the sea area in front of Hayden's line of sight, the aura is so domineering. Regarding the situation where the ghost spider was defeated in an instant, the people of warring states did not expect this scene to happen. Before they thought, no matter what, the little ghost would not be able to beat the ghost spider like a kid of several years old. No matter how powerful, the ghost spider should be able to match Hayden with a few tricks. As a result, it was beyond their expectations. Therefore, they did not immediately rush to support the ghost spider. If they knew this would be the case, they would definitely not let the ghost spider stand alone against Hayden. That guy. Sikarsky's face was terrible. This hadn't officially started yet, the kid had already killed one of them, and the kid didn't even breathe. Same. Except for Sikarsky, the three of them also had similar expressions. The Navy fleet gradually approached Hayden. And Hayden still stood in the air with his chest in his arms. The ship leaving behind him serves as a shield to withstand the attack of the naval fleet ahead. At this time, the warring states period looked at the sea area ahead of them, and the slender ship was gradually pulling away from them. He knew that Robin, who was able to interpret the text of the history, was on that ship, and that the boatman who built Roger's ship was also with him. That ship will definitely not leave smoothly. At the same time, he was looking into the air not far ahead at the moment, staring at Hayden's figure. Advertisement. All of them knew that if they had an air battle with Hayden, who had the ability to stay in the air, they would have absolutely no advantage. Thinking about this, Zhan Guo turned his head to look in the direction of Kuzan, signaled him, and nodded. Kuzan, who received the instruction, did not speak. He also nodded silently and turned back. Then, he looked at the departing ship and locked the target. Ice Age. He then said lightly. After speaking, a sharp ice thorn suddenly grew out of his hands. It was almost an instant that the ice thorn pierced into the sea in front of him. Then, in Hayden's eyes, in the eyes of countless marine soldiers around, the Lieutenant General Kuzan of the nature element, just a few breaths, completely frozen the sea in front of them within their field of vision. The bitter cold wind didn't know which direction it was from, and it suddenly blew through everyone's body. And it seemed that the cold wind rising from the bottom of everyone's heart was not necessarily. But the ice planes that appeared out of thin air seemed not to be satisfied with just an area in front of the naval fleet. Bad. Hayden was shocked when he saw this. He hurriedly turned his head back to look in Robin's direction. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Then I saw. Soon, the freezing trend had spread to Robin and the others, and the coldness swept across in an instant, freezing all the seawater that their ships were in contact with. The evacuation ship that Robin and the others boarded was trapped in place by an unknown layer of ice, unable to move at all. Crap. We're trapped. So cold. Is this the strength of the Navy? The riot suddenly appeared on the ship of the Revolutionary Army. Advertisement. Robin and the others stood at the stern of the boat, looking at the sea below with a dazed expression, only to see that the sea had turned into a white ice. At the same time, their consciousness seemed to be invaded by this chill, freezing their brains, and unable to think for a while. Calm down. Hurry up and break the ice. There was a sudden shout from the deck behind him, and his tone seemed very calm in this tense atmosphere. How many people will get off the boat? Break the ice for me. The captain of the Revolutionary Army in charge of the current ship immediately pointed a few people and commanded it. Watching their actions, Tom and Frankie both got off the ship and helped their fellow Revolutionary Army. He ignored Robin's reaction and turned to look at Tom and Frankie, who were next to him. We will hold the Navy for you. You hurry up to the City of Seven Waters. Maybe you can find another ship to leave. Here, he said to Tom calmly. Get out of me. He slashed at Sikarsky, who was in front of him. The four of them, Jongo, Zepha, Kuzan, and Sikarsky, forced Hayden from the air to the surface of the ice, which was convenient for the four of them to fight on. Just outside the ice sheet not far from Robin and the others, the Navy fleet stopped on the edge of the ice. Shu Baishui passed through Sikarsky's body, but Hayden didn't have any feeling of hitting the real thing. Moreover, the distance between the two sides is not too far at this time, and these navies are not ordinary navies. It will not take much time for them to march at a speed. Then, oh shit, on this side of the Revolutionary Army. The captain raised his head and lay his head on the side of the ship, and his companions with their heads out gestured. Get ready for battle. We must block the Navy here. Since the Navy has adopted this strategy, Hayden will not be given a chance to rush to rescue. Ever since. Miss Robin. Hurry up to the City of Seven Waters, he shouted while looking at Robin, who was also standing on the side of the boat. Simultaneously. Advertisement. Upon seeing this, Hayden couldn't help but swear. The Navy began to rush towards Robin and the others like a tide, and he himself. But now, those navies have rushed towards them with the help of the ice under their feet. They obviously don't have half an hour to break the ice. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. However, it seems that his own emotions have affected Hayden's accuracy, and Sarkarsky judged Hayden's slashing route and elementized that part of his body in advance. But, comrades, a few of them, including the captain, all jumped off the boat and landed on the thick ice, stirring up a burst of icy debris. At this moment, subsequently, when the warring states dragged Hayden, those tens of thousands of naval forces all rushed in the direction of the revolutionary ships. The captain of the Revolutionary Army looked at the companions beside him. They now only have the option of fighting. It's just that they have to fight, and they can't let Miss Robin and the others fall into the hands of the Navy. At the same time, seeing this situation, Hayden, of course he wanted to rush over immediately and help Robin and the others break through the ice so that they could sail out of here. Hayden continued to be dragged down by the full attack of the four warring states. Also at this time, there was no fear in his tone, and there was no fear of fighting tens of thousands of navies with only a few dozen of them. They also have an understanding of the current situation of the ship being trapped. The ice layer that trapped their ship can be broken. It only takes the time needed, at least half an hour, and this is still their optimistic comparison. Estimated. The other lieutenants on the naval ship and the tens of thousands of elite Marines also all fell from the warship to the ice. The captain immediately made a decision in his mind. And they also noticed that Hayden, the strongest in their side, was being dragged by the two admirals and the two natural navies, and could not come to help them. Chapter 291. Keep your head up. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Click. Robin fell from the ship to the ice, standing next to the captain of the Revolutionary Army and Tom. Then what do you do? She then asked the captain. Just relying on the dozens of revolutionary troops on this ship, how could the tens of thousands of Navy opponents? They will definitely die if they stay. After hearing this, the captain was silent for a while before speaking. Miss Robin, you are the most important one among us. You must never die here, you must never have anything to do. He did not answer Robin's question directly. After the conversation, he left the conversation. He began to command all the members of the Revolutionary Army who were already on the ice at this time, and prepare for their own battles. At this moment, the ice plain has become quite lively, and the tens of thousands of naval elites formed a dense phalanx and rushed towards the ships of the Revolutionary Army. As for the Revolutionary Army, they only have dozens of people who seem to be very pitiful. The captain of the Revolutionary Army commanded his subordinates to prepare for battle. He looked at Robin at this time. He separated a few more from the hands of few people and ordered them to protect Miss Robin with their lives. Robin looked at the Revolutionary Army in front of her and what they did for her. She had always been alone. It was hard to imagine that this situation would happen to him. She resisted the emotions in her heart and looked at both Tom and Frankie. Since these two people are Hayden's purpose in coming to the City of Seven Waters, she must help Hayden. Let's go quickly, she looked at Tom and said anxiously. However, Tom shook his head silently when he heard this. After a moment of silence, he said, "Just take Frankie and I want to stay." His tone was very calm, not as if his mind was confused for a while. Stay and die. What, Mr. Tom? Advertisement. Before Robin was surprised, Frankie immediately exclaimed when he heard this, "Mr. Tom, we can go together." His expression was full of disbelief. Robin, who came back to his senses, also immediately agreed. Some people from the Revolutionary Army delayed their stay. They should be able to get to the City of Seven Waters to find another ship. Do not. Tom shook his head in veto. His dream is to make this City of Seven Waters prosper again and be rescued from the crisis. Now, with his sea train, the City of Seven Waters is gradually returning to the past. Even if the sea train ceases to run one day, his two disciples will have enough ability to keep the sea train running. I have lived for so long and have seen so many things. His dream has been realized, and his life can be called without any regrets. And, in the face of tens of thousands of navies rushing towards them, the little devil who suddenly rescued him from the world government not far away, and the woman in front of him who can interpret the text of history. All of this seems to be the prelude before a new chapter begins. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. There is such a feeling in him. However, if Robin in front of him does not escape from the Navy, the new chapter may be over before it begins. Now is the time to do one last thing for them and for yourself. Hurry up! Tom pushed Frankie, who didn't want to leave. At this moment, those navies were not far away from them, and they were about to enter their range. Speechless for a while, Frankie understood the situation in front of him, and tears kept rolling in his eyes. Robin and several comrades of the Revolutionary Army took Frankie and began to step on the ice that stretched to the City of Seven Waters and rushed to the City of Seven Waters. Advertisement at this time. Tom jumped from the ice and onto the boat. He folded his hands on his chest, looked at Frankie who was leaving, took a deep breath, and then yelled, "Frankie! Come on! Be careful! Hold on!" The sound of metal crashing, the explosion of guns, the skyrocketing fire and smoke, and the ice slag in the sky. Boom! The voice instantly passed into Frankie's ear. He wiped away the tears from his face, and opened his eyes to look in the direction of Mr. Tom. What? He exploded out of his body's strength, and directly pulled the huge and extremely mast, abruptly and flat-bottomed like this. Seeing Tom, the Murloc, has such strength, the captain of the Revolutionary Army also laughed. "Let us block this group of Navy for them." He stared at the Navy less than 300 or 400 meters ahead and said lightly, "Ha ha 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 ha." At this moment, the Navy had no choice but to take this Murloc with strange power. Yup. Compared with the volume of the main mast, although Tom has surpassed most ordinary people as a Murloc, he still looks a little small compared with the mast. Bang bang bang. Tom hugged the mast and landed on the ice, even causing a slight shock. Frankie roared, tears bursting. His emotions had completely collapsed at this time. Therefore, the comrades of the Revolutionary Army had to carry one of his arms alone and drag him to the capital of Seven Waters. The order was quickly transmitted to the seamen who surrounded Tom, and they no longer leaned to Tom's side at this time. They were all in a circle outside the attack range of his mast. However, at this moment he played the mast like a wooden root. Advertisement, Shangguan. That Murloc's destructive power is too strong. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. For a time. Suddenly, a seaman couldn't help looking at his own chief. Tom strode over, then wrapped his arms around the mast. Surrounded by the Navy, Tom yelled and waved the mast in his hand. Each time a large swath of the Navy fell. Turned to look at the mast of the ship. The ice suddenly became confused. And his commander was paying attention to other enemies at this time. He turned his head and looked back at his subordinates. "You are stupid. The whole team shot the Murloc. Even if that guy is thick, is he still bulletproof?" He immediately lost his temper. "Frankie. Head up and chest up." Tom's voice was like a sharp arrow, and it shot into Frankie's heart, and his footsteps stopped suddenly. "Don't think about it." Tom narrowed his eyes as he watched the admiring Navy, muttering to himself. Then in less than 10 seconds, the dense Navy rushed to Tom and the others. The overlapping gunshots rang out instantly. "Kill them directly. Give me to chase the guys behind. These guys are not the primary goal." Then just listen to Mr. Tom. It seems that everything is mixed together at this moment. The expression on Tom's face remained calm. He didn't just go back to the boat to do that just now. Chapter 292 Heroic Sacrifice Previous Chapter Next Chapter. Advertisement At this moment, countless bullets all shot towards Tom's body. Of course Tom is also aware of the criticality of the situation at the moment. He reflexively waved the mast in his hand, but it was impossible for him to swing the mast 360 degrees in an instant, blocking all the bullets from all directions in an instant. The unblocked bullet pierced into Tom's body instantly. Woo! Several blood blossoms bloomed on Tom's body, and blood was oozing out of his mouth uncontrollably. He could feel that his movements were a little sluggish, but the physical sensations were not enough to make him give up. "Drink." Tom yelled violently, enduring the number of gunshot wounds on his body, and forced a sigh of relief. Since these guys around are not leaning over, then he leaned over by himself. He began to move in one direction, and the huge weight of his body immediately made the ice tremble. Not good. Seeing the action of the Murloc, the surrounding Marines suddenly cried out and hurriedly started to retreat. At the same time, the seamen from other directions continued to shoot at Tom's body. Bang bang bang. The gunshots continued, and within a short while, the front and back of Tom's body were stained red with blood, and the original skin color could not be seen. However, he still did not fall. Advertisement with a tenacious will, he continued to wave the mast in his hand as if he did not feel pain, and cleared a large area with a single sweep, and then the seamen filled the vacancy. At the same time, Tom's heroic performance cannot help but shock the Revolutionary Army who fought on the same battlefield with him, and also shocked Robin and the others who were about to reach the capital of Seven Waters at this time, and even more shocked Hayden who had come to pay attention. Hayden held knives in both hands to block the attacks of the warring states and others, but his eyes did not rest on their attacks. He couldn't help his eyes widening as he watched Tom's behavior. Although Tom looked very mighty at this moment, he was already overwhelmed in his body, and it seemed that he would collapse instantly in the next second. Everything now is different from what Hayden had previously expected. He had planned everything last night, but it was just daylight today and everything was in the worst situation. Oh shit. Hayden didn't have the easy-to-use expression on his face, and his facial features couldn't help but twisted together. At this time, Tom's swinging the mast became slower and slower, and his movements became slower and slower. The interval between each of his breaths became longer and longer, and his breath gradually faded. He should have been unable to do it long ago, but relying on the belief in his heart that is enough to cross the sea, he has been supporting it until now. He has persisted for so long and blocked tens of thousands of navies in front of him. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Tom's mast fell heavily on the ice, and at this time he had no strength to move his fingers. Sir, is that guy dying, right? A seaman looked at Tom and asked the chief cautiously. Probably. His commander was also a little uncertain. The atmosphere of the battlefield was strangely quiet at this moment. Tom stood erect on the ice. Although he didn't make any defensive actions, no seaman dared to approach rashly within more than 10 meters of his body. Advertisement just at this time. Tom, who looked silent, finally fell heavily on the ice. He did not leave a word, only the countless sea soldiers who fell down around him. The man who built the ship for Roger, the Pirate King, and the man who built the miraculous sea train, Tom, died after fighting with the Navy for more than 10 minutes and eliminating hundreds or even thousands of seamen. Hayden sensed this situation in an instant, and his face suddenly sank. He didn't have extra time to be sentimental. Tom not only helped them delay time, but also created opportunities for him. Robin and the others were far away from the Navy, and they were about to return to the city of Seven Waters. For a while, those navies could not catch up with Robin and them. In this way, he doesn't have to distract his attention on both sides, thinking that he needs to help Robin as soon as possible, but at the same time he has to deal with the 4 people in front of him. Now he doesn't need to focus on Robin's side for the time being. Their side is still safe. He only needs to focus on the 4 people in front of him now. Hayden looked at the 4 people from the Warring States period who surrounded him back and forth, his eyes condensed. Boom. An ultra-high concentration of Ling Qian suddenly emerged from his body, instantly presenting a swaying white flame scene in front of the 4 of the Warring States period, and Hayden was being wrapped in that white flame. The scenes that happened before flashed in his heart, flashed by the fellows of the Revolutionary Army, and the scenes of Tom sacrificed for them, and the emotions in his heart seemed to be doused with a bucket of gasoline. Get out of me! Hayden let out a violent shout and slashed back Sakaski, who took advantage of this opportunity to attack him. Suddenly, a strong wave of air swept the surroundings. The Warring States, Zepha, and Kuzan couldn't help blocking their arms in front of them to resist the blast that swept through. However, Hayden was not finished with just one shot. Advertisement focusing on Sikarsky, who was retreating rapidly. Hayden kicked the ice, and a cobweb-like crack appeared on the ice. After a bang, Hayden's figure followed Sikarsky closely. Since you are of the Nature Department, I will also give you a nature department, Hayden thought to himself, and said silently. Scatter it, Shinbon Sakura. In an instant, the Shinbon Sakura in Hayden's left hand only has a knife handle without a blade. But where is the blade? At this time, the blade has turned into millions of tiny blades, and under the shining of light, it suddenly shines with a brilliant cherry blossom luster. Shattering. The all-sky cherry blossoms that popped up out of thin air gathered together, and they even made a sound like the waves, and even their behavior was not much different from the waves. However, Senbon Sakura's posture is not complete at this point. There was a clang sound, as if the sound of metal scratching suddenly sounded. Immediately afterwards, I saw the waves of cherry blossoms undulating above Hayden's head, all covered with a mysterious purple and black domineering. Bad, bad, bad. During the Warring States period, they all secretly cried out in their hearts. They didn't know how powerful Hayden's attack was, but the scale and scope of that attack were absolutely impossible for them to avoid. Faced with this huge attack that exudes an unknown aura, Sakarsky also knew that it didn't make any sense to dodge at this moment. However, he did not have any emotional changes. Chapter 293 A War on the Verge of. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Boy. Sakarsky yelled, his face a little sordid, are you conscious of it? While opening the mouth, a huge lava arm exuding ultra-high temperature is extending from Sakarsky's right arm. The process of extension continues to increase the volume of the big fist and the power contained in the lava. The lava giant fist reached a terrifying size within a few seconds. At this moment, the Sakura waves controlled by Hayden also accumulated a wave of charge energy and attitude. Sakarsky is ready. Hayden is also ready, in an instant. Hayden wielded the bladeless Shinbon Sakura, and controlled the monster purple and black petals that looked like a huge wave, and rushed towards Sakarsky, who was not far away in his eyes. And the lava giant fist thrown by Sakarsky also burned the surrounding air at the same moment, and rushed straight towards the sky with thin blades in front of him. Next moment, the cherry blossom waves made contact with the high-temperature lava. Immediately, there was a sound of chi-chi-chi in the air. At the same time, countless small groups of gas exploded and gathered into a wide range of smoke. Immediately afterwards, what broke out of the smoke was not the lava of Sakarsky, but the cherry blossoms of Hayden Senbon Sakura. In just a moment, the huge and infinitely powerful lava was decomposed by thousands of Senbon Sakura's thin blades, leaving only some gas lingering in the air. What? Sakarsky was shocked when he saw this. He obviously underestimated the true power of this thing. But Hayden's cherry blossom wave that disintegrated lava did not intend to stop. Senbon Sakura continued to whistle towards Sakarsky's body. Sakarsky did not hesitate. Advertisement. Since this thing can decompose his attack just now, it means that the general defense methods will not be effective, and the range of this move cannot be pre-elementalized by the natural element. Armed. With a clang, a layer of black armor flashed across Sakarsky's body. He crossed his arms against his chest, and lowered his head to the back of his arms to cover it. Then the next moment, a swarm of cherry blossoms in the sky bombarded Sakarsky's body, just like the kind of locust plague that covered the sky. Chi-chi-chi-chi. Thousands of thin blades slashed across Sakarsky's body. Red magma splashed everywhere, but the splashed magma seemed to contain different red liquids. After a while, the huge number of cherry blossoms were finally scraped from Sakarsky's body. At this time, only a calm face was left, and Sakarsky, whose entire defense was completely breached, appeared in place. There were countless small wounds all over his body. If there is only one minor wound, it won't make Sakarsky feel any pain at all. However, he now has wounds all over his body, and there is no skin on top and bottom, which is still intact, except for being firmly protected by his hands, outside the strict face. Huh. Sakarsky took a deep breath and slowly let go of his hands in front of him. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi at the same time. Seeing the situation on Sakarsky's body at this time made Kuzan and the three of them clearly aware. Even if the current kid doesn't rely on the demon form he had at that time, he has the strength to be an opponent of several of them and the strength to threaten them even in his current ordinary state. Trouble. Kuzan 3 thought in their hearts at the same time. Now it's not like these people, relying on their number and strength advantages, deal with Hayden and solve Hayden. At this moment, advertisement, they must be careful not to lose their lives in this battle. In a 4-to-1 situation, they no longer have the upper hand. Now it was Hayden that kid had the upper hand, subsequently. Seeing that Sikorsky was temporarily unable to move, Hayden turned to look at the three of Kuzan and the others, while waving Senbon Sakura to turn its direction back towards them. The warring states yelled, indicating that it was time for him to take action. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. Suddenly, the sound of an object breaking through the air at extreme speed was caught by Hayden's keen sense of hearing. Next moment, Hayden pointed in the direction and slammed on the ice surface under his feet. After making a cobweb-like crack open, his body was directly flush with the ice surface below him, almost flying in the air against the ice surface. A black fist with great power appeared behind him. But Hayden determined the direction immediately, then followed with a slash and swung out. No matter what he came over, he slashed it first. There is no sword aura visible to the naked eye, nothing can be felt by ordinary people, just as if he swiped the air twice. Boom! Then, following his voice, an ice wall about 1 meter wide, suddenly the ice surface not far in front of the three of them rose. But then, left, similarly, the group of cherry blossoms swaying in the air followed Hayden, and its shape became like a sharp arrow. Where? Advertisement. Zephyr. Kuzan's eyes condensed. His hands stretched out suddenly. Ice wall, he shouted. A terrifying crack suddenly opened on the ice surface that was hit by the great impact, and then with a bang, a huge block of ice was directly lifted by the punch and blocked the three of them. Call out. But then, strangely, Hayden lost sight of the three Kuzan. At the same time the voice fell, but the next moment, the huge ice cube was magically cut open, revealing the smooth and flat surface that was cut open. The ice cube then slid down and hit the sides, clearing a straight path for Hayden. Kuzan and the three of them were not surprised, it's just that what they had expected before was not this way of breaking apart. Zephyr and Kuzan immediately prepared for the impact. Hayden thought to himself, his empty footsteps could not help slowing down, and his attention began to spread around him. Facing the obstacle that suddenly rose up ahead, Hayden still flew in parallel without any pause. He focused on the huge ice block in front of him, and immediately swung his sleeve by shui twice towards the ice block in front of him. The slash was silent. Coming. The warring states yelled out calmly. The special ice wall with extremely strong defensive power has just risen to the point where it hasn't been 5 or 6 seconds. It was shot through by Senbon Sakura in an instant, shooting out a big hole, just enough for Hayden's body to pass through the ice wall without stopping. However, what slashed off was a lifeless ice bird. Zephyr heard no response, and instantly clenched his right fist, tightening his arm muscles, and then he slammed a punch towards the ice under his feet. His arm immediately turned around, and with an extremely exaggerated amount, he slashed directly behind him, without turning his head back. Although Hayden didn't turn his head back, he could feel the chill on his back quietly rising, and the slight breath. The rising speed was so fast that it took less than 3 or 4 seconds to block all the space in front of them, at least 20 to 30 meters high. Boom. Chapter 294. I'm most afraid of the sudden silence of the air. Previous chapter advertisement. Boom. The blade collided with the metal wall. The loud noise also sputtered a dazzling spark, but neither Hayden nor Zephyr was affected by this spark. Next second, the strength on Hayden's blade instantly surpassed Zephy's wrist strength. This kid. Zephyr couldn't help clenching his teeth, using all his strength to counter Hayden's power. However, his move only delayed a few seconds for him. Afterwards, Hayden's chopping and slashing directly knocked Zephyr out like a baseball. With a bang, Zephy's body flew out far away, immediately afterwards. At this moment, when Hayden was temporarily unable to change his figure, the attack of the warring states also came to him. Enlightenment, kid. At the same time the voice of the warring states period sounded, his palms exuding dazzling golden light also slapped against Hayden's defenseless chest. Hayden groaned immediately, his body was sunken by the attack, and then he flew out like Zephyr just now. However, after a while, Hayden stopped the pain that ran through his body. He could clearly feel that the attack intensity of the Warring States' palm was definitely much stronger than before. Indeed, his strength is not the only one in this world that is improving. Hayden thrust into the ice with his sleeve Baishui upside down, helping him to stop the tendency to retreat. After Shu Baishui made a long crack on the ice, the impact on his body gradually subsided. At this time, the attack of the third person, Kuzan, also came on Hayden's head. Advertisement Kuzan held up the long ice blade in his hand, locked onto Hayden below, and slammed down. Click. After the ice blade in Kuzan's hand touched Hayden's blade, it lasted only about 2 seconds before it shattered like fragile porcelain. Simultaneously, Hayden swung the swordless Senbon Sakura hilt down sharply. Next moment, on the top of Hayden and Kuzan at this time, a large shadow suddenly appeared, covering the two of them. Not good. Kuzan realized what was wrong with his head, and with a thought, he immediately elementized his body and speeded up to leave here. However, his speed is very fast, but he is not as fast as Hayden. Shattering. The group of cherry blossoms suddenly poured down like a waterfall on Kuzan's body. Then, a cloud of cold air immediately exploded over Hayden's head, like a wave of air that would only be generated when an explosion, instantly spreading towards the surroundings. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. At this time, Hayden's gaze suddenly turned to one direction, and then he saw the elemental Kuzan gradually taking shape in his sight. After forming, he also had several more subtle wounds on his body, oozing red blood. After that, Sikarsky also joined this chaos. The 5 men fought a battle beyond everyone's imagination on this vast ice plain. 5 figures flickered on this ice sheet. They might be here for 1 second, but they might be 1,000 meters away in the next second. Each flicker represents a violent collision. The violent collision will produce a strong shock wave, spreading in all directions, setting off everything in the place it passes, and setting off a sky full of ice scum and ice crystals. Advertisement for a time, the scene was very chaotic. As time passed by 1 second, the sky above the ice sheet became darker, even if the time was still broad daylight. The sky was all affected by Hayden's fighting spirit. Gradually lose the color. But this is more than that at the moment. Above the Navy ship at the marginal position, there are still some seamen who are not part of the combat unit left. They all lie on the side of the ship and look at the plane in front of the line of sight. The expressions on everyone's faces are the same. The eyes widened, the mouth widened, even the saliva dripped from their mouths on the deck, they didn't even know. Suddenly, the atmosphere between the 5 people suddenly fell silent. Boy! What nonsense are you talking about? Sikarsky's face immediately sank. With a click, it spread into everyone's ears. One of Kuzan's arms was cut to the point by Hayden, temporarily losing his ability to move. Hey! He shouted to the 4 people in the Warring States period. I said, how about we just stop like this? Huh. 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 They did not answer Hayden. As if dropping a needle can be heard on the ground. The place where the generals fought is obviously far away from here. More than one crack appeared in their eyes, several cracks appeared in an instant. Everyone couldn't help talking to themselves. Hayden's tone was a little casual when he spoke, so that the 4 of the Warring States could not understand his thoughts at this time. Everyone felt weird, and then the next moment, the ice surface below their eyes opened a wide crack. The air suddenly fell silent. Advertisement as for General Warring States, he had completely lost his prestige as an admiral. Although the slash was blocked by him, the powerful impact carried by the slash itself directly broke through and entered him. At this time. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. There was a horrible knife wound on Sikarsky's body that started from his left shoulder and extended to the waist on the right side. The blood of the wound was restrained by himself, but the damage caused did not disappear. They could feel that the warship under their feet was shaking. The shaking was not caused by waves, but caused by strong shocks transmitted in the air. The air is shaking, the space is shaking. ZFA's body also showed signs of frostbite, and at the same time his physical strength began to fail to support this intensity, and he continued to attack without interruption. The same situation happened to the Kuzan 3, but their injuries were more serious than Hayden's. Hayden recovered Senbon Sakura's initial solution, and then put Senbon Sakura, who had returned to the normal blade form, into the scabbard. I said, "You see that we are all from the same starting point. Everyone chose to come to the sea for justice. In fact, you can choose to join me." But then, Hayden didn't do what they thought. But what dreaded them was not the appearance of the crack, but how could this crack extend to the extreme edge of this plane of ice? Hayden didn't care, he continued. They swore that they had never seen such an indescribable battle in their lives. Can our human strength reach this level? Seeing Hayden's move, the four of them couldn't help being vigilant. The kid's action of closing the knife was not a good sign. Why did the sound just now resemble something cracking? Seeing that none of the four of them meant to speak, Hayden had something to say to them. Immediately afterwards, Hayden couldn't help gasping for breath, standing still on the spot without launching an attack. Several wounds appeared on his body, some of which were frozen by the cold, some of his muscles were directly sunken, and some of his body was directly necrotic.